Chapter 1684. All of the righteous faction's murderous aura surged as they charged towards Bai My Daoist, and he immediately fell into a sea of people's war. There was no need for Tang Zheng to make a move. These people wished they could kill him with their own hands. Those few puppets could only kill instinctively, and in the end they were not a match for so many people, and were quickly subdued, while Bai My Daoist's murderous aura surged, and was much more powerful than the puppets. Just as the righteous faction's people approached him, they died on the spot. However, the other righteous faction's people were like a tide, advancing wave after wave, not fearing death at all, as if they would not give up until they killed Bai My Daoist. The righteous faction's people were either injured or killed, but Bai My Daoist was getting braver as he fought. Tang Jing slightly frowned. This situation was not good. If the righteous faction's people died, it would be Tang Jing's loss, because the righteous faction's people were still very useful to him. You still dare to resist stubbornly, surrender without a fight. Tang Zheng roared righteously. His body was like a swan, flying in front of Bai My Daoist, and the other righteous faction's people were immediately forced far away by his aura, unable to get close to Bai My Daoist, and naturally their lives were saved. Tang Zheng directly faced Bai My Daoist, revealing a look of disdain. Bai My Daoist stared at Tang Zheng with fire in his eyes, and said hysterically, "Tang Zheng, if not for you, I would not have reached this stage today. All of this is because of you, go die." Whoosh! The horsetail whisk once again expanded, and thousands of strands of whisk attacked as fast as lightning. Tang Zheng stretched out his finger, and lightly tapped the air. The hidden mystic sword appeared out of thin air. Following the direction of his finger, it swiftly chopped down. Boom! In the midst of the loud sound, the horsetail whisk exploded, turning into pieces. No longer able to grow strands of whisk, this treasure was completely destroyed. The hidden mystic sword's momentum did not decrease, and continued forward, instantly arriving in front of Bai My Daoist. A sharp sword aura flew into his body. His entire body trembled, as if he had been immobilized, and could no longer move. The originally berserk aura vanished like smoke in thin air, completely silenced. With just one move, the killing Bai My Daoist was defeated. The other people's gazes towards Tang Zheng changed again and again, in their hearts, too powerful. Tang Zheng lightly clapped his fingers, and the hidden profound sword flew back into his body. He walked in front of the White Eyebrows Daoist, and although the White Eyebrows Daoist hated him to death, he could only stare at him and roar in anger. "Tang Zheng, what did you do to me?" "Bai My Daoist, 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 Bai My Daoist Da. What are you going to do?" Bai My Daoist's face was filled with fear, and quickly asked. Tang Zheng raised the corner of his mouth, but did not answer his question. But then, Bai My Daoist's body made a loud sound, and Bai My Daoist madly screamed. The screams resounded through the clouds, causing the others to be moved, but not many people pitied him. Instead, they felt very carefree, and very relieved. But in their hearts, they were a little curious. What did Tang Zheng do to Bai My Daoist, to make him suffer so much? You destroyed my Yuanying." After a long time, Bai My Daoist finally had the strength to tell the truth, but he no longer had the strength to shout. He was like a dead dog. When the others heard this, their hearts turned cold, and they all looked at Tang Zheng. He actually destroyed Bai My Daoist's Yuanying. To a cultivator, the Yuanying was the most fundamental. It was the source of all strength, and when the Yuanying was destroyed, their martial arts would naturally disappear. Bai My Daoist relied on his martial arts to strut around, so Tang Zheng destroyed his martial arts, making him lose his most precious thing, and then he would have nothing left. After the sword light destroyed the Yuanying, Bai My Daoist once again regained his freedom, but his body was weak, and he fell to the ground like a dead shrimp. He was no longer a threat. The others did not pity him. All of this was his own fault, and he could not blame anyone else. Tang Zheng took a step back, and said, "I'll leave him to you. You can do whatever you want with him." The righteous faction once again surrounded Bai My Daoist. Bai My Daoist raised his head, fiercely looked around, and said, "You are a group of traitors. I am the leader of the righteous faction, but you listen to the slanderous words of an outsider. Shut up." A roar rang out, interrupting Daoist White Brow's attempt to distort the truth. "You still have the face to talk about others. You are the most despicable and shameless. How do we deal with him? Didn't we just say it?" His actions are all capital crimes. He will die without a doubt. He will die without a doubt. The crowd did not let him go just because his yuaniying was destroyed. Since he was already sentenced to death, then he must be executed to the end. The righteous faction looked at each other, and as if their hearts were in sync, they began to circulate their martial arts. Seeing this scene, Bai My Daoist was still in shock, and hurriedly said, "I already have no yuaniying, you still want to kill me?" No one answered him. But one by one, the treasured weapons flew up from the righteous path and flew towards Bai My Daoist. The blazing light enveloped Bai My Daoist, and he screamed in despair. Suddenly, the screams stopped abruptly. An earth-shattering boom erupted from the blazing light. Then, one by one, the magic treasures flew back into the hands of their respective owners. The light gradually dissipated, and Bai My Daoist's figure could no longer be seen. In that powerful attack, not even his bones were left. The righteous faction shared a common enemy, and could not help but heave a sigh of relief. This was revenge for their dead comrades. Seeing his father's fate, Gao Ming was so scared that his entire body went limp. He fell to the ground softly. He wasn't sad for his father, but he was completely frightened. He grieved for his father's death, and his heart was anxious. He didn't know what his fate would be. He raised his head in shock, looked at Yi Yuan, and said while trembling with fear, "I have already done everything you asked for. Now, can you let me go?" How could Yi Yuan dare to let go of his life? He looked towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng understood and said, "You have committed many evil deeds and secretly colluded with the enemy. You want to escape this calamity just like that. Do you really think that everyone is a fool?" Shi Ming screamed and stammered, "But you clearly promised me that once I told you the truth, you would let me live. Then you should first ask them if they agree." Tang Zheng pointed at Xiao Bai and the others. Xiao Bai took the hint and stepped forward. The ancestor and the others also glared at Dao Sheng with righteous indignation. If it wasn't for him informing them, the Suicide Valley wouldn't have been destroyed, and they wouldn't have had to flee to the wilderness. "Of course I won't." Xiao Bai closed in on Dao Sheng, revealing his killing intent. With so many of his subordinates dead and injured, how could he let Dao Sheng off so easily? "You all went back on your word." Risking his life shouted, "Haha, is there a need to talk about credibility with people like you who have no bottom line?" Xiao Bai asked disdainfully. Shi Sai Ming had nothing to say in response. He had regretted countless things, but this time, it was finally his turn to suffer the consequences of his own actions. Yes, kill him. He is also a traitor of the righteous path. Seeing this, the other righteous path members all shouted out in unison, their killing intent soaring into the clouds. "As everyone wishes." Xiao Bai shouted loudly, and with a flick of his finger, a ball of flame emerged from his fingertip, quickly changing, and turning into a ball of flame that landed on Dao Sheng's body. Chapter 1685. 1 Second to Remember, wonderful novel to read at any time. The white eyebrows movement and the sacrificing one's life, everybody felt as if a mouthful of resentment had been released from their chests and abdomens. Gradually they calmed down, their mood also calmed down. What should they do next? This thought surfaced in everyone's mind. They looked at each other in dismay and began to whisper to each other. Silence. Xiao Bai suddenly roared loudly. Everyone turned their heads and looked at Xiao Bai with a complicated expression. Xiao Bai said in a clear voice, "Now, let me invite my master to speak." After saying that, he took the initiative to take a step back, exposing Tang Zheng to everyone. Tang Zheng coughed dryly, cleared his throat, and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, as the leader of the Righteous Alliance, Bai My Daoist knowingly broke the law and secretly colluded with the enemy. Now that he has been executed, do you think this matter is over?" Everyone's heart trembled, not understanding the meaning of Tang Zheng's words. "This is only the beginning." Tang Zheng said decisively, "Bai My Daoist colluded with Hao Tianwang, and Hao Tianwang sent troops to attack the Suicide Valley and returned in defeat. How do you think Hao Tianwang will vent his anger?" Everyone revealed a suspicious expression and became even more confused. All of this is because of Bai My Daoist, so Hao Tianwang will naturally vent his anger on him. Bai My Daoist and you are all of the same path, so will Hao Tianwang let you go? The powerful question made everyone speechless. After careful consideration, they realized that Tang Zheng was not an alarmist, and Hao Tianwang was very likely to vent his anger on them. Bai My Daoist is dead, then what should we do? Someone could not hold back and asked loudly. Tang Zheng was waiting for this question. He had to make the righteous path worry about their own survival so that he could intervene. Do you have the confidence to fight against Hao Tianwang? Tang Zheng was not in a hurry to answer, but threw out another question. The righteous path looked at each other. No one had the courage or confidence to say that they could fight against Hao Tianwang, because they really did not have the strength. If you don't have the strength to fight against Hao Tianwang, then there is only one result, death. Tang Zheng said casually. The word death made everyone's hair stand on end and their faces turned pale. It was as if Hao Tianwang had already arrived in front of them and death was right in front of them. Wild Dog had an idea and said loudly, "But you have the strength to deal with Hao Tianwang." These words quickly ignited everyone's hope. Everyone looked eagerly at Tang Zheng. Wild Dog continued, "You exposed the true faces of Bai My Daoist and his son, and cleaned up the sect for the righteous path. In the future, with you leading the righteous path, won't we be able to fight against Hao Tianwang?" Wild Dog was a smart person. He had long known that Tang Zheng wanted to control the righteous path, but had not cut in. Now, wasn't this the perfect opportunity to cut in? In the righteous path, only Wild Dog had the deepest relationship with Tang Zheng. This naturally needed him to bring it up. Otherwise, if he let Tang Zheng bring it up himself, wouldn't that be too degrading? Wild Dog was able to survive in the cracks because he had his own set of survival rules. If he could not understand these rules, then he would not have been able to survive until now. Tang Zheng gave Wild Dog a deep look, and there was a look of approval in the depths of his eyes. He had not misjudged Wild Dog. Wild Dog had helped him a lot. The righteous path had long been tempered over the years. They understood that in these troubled times, they needed to find a backer, only then could they survive. What kind of people were Hao Tianwang and King Wuling, and how powerful they were, they had long experienced. Therefore, they needed someone to stand in front of them, only then could they survive. That makes sense. Tang Zheng has cleaned up the sect for the righteous path, and his cultivation is extremely high. No one can compare to him. It is natural for him to be the leader of the righteous path. Someone agreed, and the voices of agreement grew louder and louder. Tang Zheng is the popular choice. We are sincerely convinced. Bai My Daoist's cronies were originally fence-sitters. Their boss was dead, how could they dare to be noisy? They were deeply afraid that Tang Zheng would pursue them. Instead, they were the ones who shouted the loudest. Of course, there was no lack of independent thinkers in the righteous path. They questioned, Tang Zheng is not a member of the righteous path. Can he be the leader of the righteous path just because he is strong? If that's the case, doesn't that mean Hao Tianwang is more qualified to be the leader? As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent. It was as if everyone was frightened by these words. Everyone looked at the person who spoke. It was actually the leader of Kingshuman, Taishuzi. Taishuzi seemed to have thrown caution to the wind. He said righteously, moreover, he is with the traitor of our sect. That makes him even more qualified to be the leader of the righteous path. Taishuzi had wanted to rely on Tang Zheng in the past. Moreover, Tang Zheng had saved everyone in Kingshuman. However, Tang Zheng was with Tian Chanzi, and Tian Chanzi was a traitor of Kingshuman. Taishuzi was an upright person. He could not get over the hurdle in his heart. Although everyone else agreed that Tang Zheng should be the leader, he could not sit by and do nothing. He boldly raised an objection. Taishuzi, what nonsense are you talking about? The others were afraid that Tang Zheng would be angry, so they all reprimanded him. Tang Zheng looked at Taishuzi deeply. He did not pay much attention to him in the past. He did not expect him to be so bold. He was not angry. Instead, he was happy. At least it proved that Taishuzi was an upright person. Taishuzi's expression changed when he was criticized by everyone. He was under great pressure, but he still insisted, I'm telling the truth. It's just that you don't dare to say it. Moreover, this concerns Kingshuman's reputation. I have to say it. Looking at this scene, Heaven Monk's thoughts were extremely complicated. He had never thought of this scene before, and never thought that he would ruin Tang Zheng's plan. He knew that Tang Zheng needed the strength of the righteous faction. This was the most important factor in helping Xiao Bai reclaim the Outland. Moreover, the righteous faction also needed Tang Zheng. Without a strong leader like Tang Zheng, the righteous faction would be in a state of disunity. Their days in the Outland would be even more difficult, and they might even face a disaster. Even his master, Kingsuman, was no exception. Everyone looked at Tang Zheng. They did not know how he would respond. Tang Zheng knew that this was a tricky situation. He had to protect Tian Chanzi, which meant that he was standing against Kingsuman. This was an unsolvable problem. The only person who could solve this problem was Tian Chanzi. However, Tian Chanzi would rather die than talk about what happened in the past. Tian Chanzi knew that this was all on him. He was struggling in his heart. Taishuzi said, "If there's nothing to say, then the matter of the righteous faction's leader will have to be discussed later." Xiao Bai looked at Tang Zheng worriedly. He asked in a low voice, "Master, what should we do? Do you need me to shut Taishuzi up?" Tang Zheng shook his head. If he really did that, he would be no different from Bai My Day Oist. In an instant, the originally favorable situation was ruined. Everyone felt as if 1,000 pounds of weight had been placed on their hearts. Many of the righteous path stared at Tai Shuzi indignantly, wishing that they could beat him up and shut him up. In such a dangerous environment like the sky beyond heaven, if the heaven monk did not stand up for them, how would they live their lives? Thump. Suddenly, there was the sound of footsteps. Tian Chanzi walked forward and stood in front of Taishuzi. He said in a low voice, "Kingsuman said that I am a traitor. Because of what happened in the past, I do not want to ruin Kingsuman's reputation. Therefore, I am willing to bear this infamy. However, if I don't tell the truth now, not only will I bear the infamy, but I will also implicate Tang Zheng, who has always cared for me. Today, I will let you know who the real traitor of Kingsuman is." Please visit this website to read the latest novel. Chapter 1686. Tian Chan's words were powerful and resonating. Everyone's spirit was shaken as they pricked up their ears and stared at him with burning eyes. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up as the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. He had always believed that Tian Chanzi was innocent and that there was definitely some inside story. It was just that Tian Chanzi was unwilling to mention it. Now it seemed that his eyes were right. There really was some inside story. Tian Chanzi was unwilling to mention it because he was worried about Kingsuman's reputation. From this, it could be seen that he was fiercely protective of his sect. How could someone who was so protective of his sect be a traitor? Most of the people were in a gossipy mood and couldn't wait to hear what Tian Chanzi had to say. Taishuzi's heartstrings trembled as his expression changed slightly. "What do you mean by this? Don't you hate traitors so much? I'll let you know who the real traitor is," Tian Chanzi calmly said. Taishuzi seemed to have a bad premonition as he braced himself and said, "I'd like to hear what you have to say." He firmly believed in the things passed down by his sect. Since generation after generation used Tian Chanzi as a negative example, then he must be extremely bad. He must be someone that Kingsuman deeply hated. Tian Chanzi took a deep breath and closed his eyes slightly as if he was immersed in deep memories. His face revealed a complex expression. Sweetness, pain, happiness, all kinds of complex expressions interweaved on his face, as if he was drawing all kinds of gorgeous colors on a drawing board. Tian Chanzi opened his mouth and slowly spoke. Vivid scenes were displayed in front of everyone's eyes like a scroll painting. 1,000 years ago, Kingsuman was still a famous sect. 3 youths, 1 male and 2 females, entered Kingsuman's sect and became martial brothers and sisters. The oldest of them was given the name Tian Chanzi by the sect and was the senior brother. The fairy-like girl was given the name Miao Yin. The other youth was given the name Tian Kanzi. The 3 martial brothers and sisters cultivated together and comprehended together as if they were one person. The stars changed and the 3 grew up. Their cultivation levels were gradually separated. Tian Chan's cultivation level was the highest, followed by Miao Yin, and Tian Kanzi's cultivation level was slightly lower and ranked third. The three of them were the top figures of Kingshuman's younger generation. Even in the entire cultivation world, they weren't inferior. In these 10 years, Tian Kanzi and Miao Yin fell in love with each other and secretly developed feelings for each other. However, Tian Kanzi also fell in love with Miao Yin. Tian Kanzi didn't reveal his relationship with Miao Yin out of consideration for his junior brother's feelings. Although it was widely rumored in Kingshuman that Tian Kanzi was the next sect master, the sect master of Kingshuman didn't make a decision arbitrarily. In order to test who was the most suitable candidate, he sent the three of them down the mountain to gain experience. Tian Kanzi didn't know this was a test for the sect master selection. However, Tian Kanzi eavesdropped on the conversation between the sect master and the elders and knew the significance of this experience. He knew that if he won this experience, he might become the next sect master. If he became the sect master, he would have a chance to be with Miao Yin. Therefore, during the experience, Tian Kanzi did his best to perform well. He destroyed the devil's nest and became famous. However, compared to him, Tian Kanzi's performance was more dazzling and his reputation was more prominent. Tian Kanzi sadly found that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't compete with Tian Kanzi. Jealousy and hatred grew in his heart. In order to achieve his goal, he began to use underhanded means. He even deliberately leaked information to the Devil's Army and attracted the Devil's Army to hunt him down. This experience didn't only involve the three of them. There were other outstanding young people in Kingshuman who were led by Tian Kanzi. These people were surrounded by the Devil's Army and suffered heavy casualties. In the end, except for the three of them, the rest were all killed in battle and fled back to Kingshuman. The sect leader flew into a rage and investigated the responsibility of the Heaven Monk, believing that he had undeniable responsibility for all of this. Tian Kanzi was punished by the sect master to reflect on his mistakes for 3 years. 3 years later, when he returned to the public, everything had changed. Tian Kanzi suddenly became an influential figure in Kingshuman. Tian Kanzi didn't care. He didn't like to fight for power. Because he felt guilty about the death of his fellow sect members, he didn't care about the affairs of the sect. The only obsession in his heart was his junior sister, Miao Yin. The sect master of Kingshuman passed away and passed the position to Tian Kanzi. He even betrothed Miao Yin to Tian Kanzi. Tian Kanzi was shocked and desperate. He had once expressed his love for Miao Yin to the sect master and hoped that the sect master would let them be together. The sect master had already agreed. Tian Kanzi was deeply hurt when the sect master went back on his words. Seeing that Tian Kanzi and Miao Yin's wedding date was approaching, Tian Kanzi didn't want to see it happen. He left Kingshuman without hesitation. While traveling outside, he had unintentionally caught a demon clan, and the demon clan had unintentionally revealed the matter of him cooperating with Tian Kanzi. Only then did Heaven Monk understand that the reason for his crushing defeat back then was because Tian Kanzi had leaked the news. Tian Kanzi, who had lost all hope, was reignited with fighting spirit and anger. He went back on his words in Kingshuman and went to reason with Tian Kanzi. Tian Kanzi was already the sect master and had already married Miao Yin. Tian Kanzi naturally returned without success. Tian Kanzi didn't admit it at all. Instead, he slandered Tian Kanzi for colluding with the devil race. In addition, the elders in Kingshuman found the death of the former sect master strange. They suspected that someone killed him, and it was someone very close to him. Tian Kanzi took the opportunity to pin the crime on Tian Kanzi. He said that Tian Kanzi killed the sect master because he saw that the position of sect master was hopeless. Tian Kanzi's methods were impressive. Although he hadn't been the sect master for long, he had already secretly controlled most of the people in Kingshuman. When he gave an order, most of the people naturally denounced Tian Kanzi and wanted to capture him to avenge the former sect master. After a fierce battle, Tian Kanzi escaped with wounds all over his body. However, he didn't run away. Instead, he found his junior martial sister Miao Yin. After Miao Yin married Tian Kanzi, she gradually discovered his true colors. Naturally, she eloped with Tian Kanzi and left Kingshuman. Tian Kanzi was furious. He sent out countless people to kill the two of them. He also announced Tian Chanzi's numerous crimes and nailed him on the pillar of shame as a traitor. Tian Chanzi and Miao Yin hid from place to place. In the end, Miao Yin died in the hands of the enemy. Before she died, she left a last wish for Tian Chanzi to find a way to return to Kingshuman and wash away the shame on him. Tian Chanzi was heartbroken when his beloved died. If it weren't for Miao Yin's last wish, he would have followed in her footsteps. Tian Chanzi already knew that the culprit was Tian Kanzi. The murder of the sect master and the so-called marriage arranged by the sect master were also orchestrated by Tian Kanzi. Therefore, Tian Chanzi had to collect detailed evidence in order to overthrow Tian Kanzi. Although Tian Kanzi inherited the position of sect master, the elders in Kingshuman still had the power to impeach the sect master. However, if he wanted the elders to listen to his grievances and evidence, there must be conditions. There was no chance for him to speak in front of them. The only condition was that he had to make a great contribution to Kingshuman. Unparalleled martial arts was one of the conditions. As long as Tian Chanzi found a set of unparalleled martial arts and offered it to Kingshuman, the elders would listen to his grievances. Unfortunately, in order to obtain the legendary ancient Tongtian scroll, his soul was unfortunately sucked into the scroll along with the Yin demon. To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1687. The Heaven Monk spoke tirelessly. The events of the past were full of twists and turns, causing people to be intoxicated by it, their hearts rising and falling. Many people were deeply attracted by the fate of the Heaven Monk, they suddenly realized, so this was the inside story of the past. Many people felt that it was unfair for him. Generations after generations of Kingshuman had labeled Tian Chanzi as a traitor. This was a great shame. It must have been Tian Chanzi's doing. Everyone gnashed their teeth at Tian Chanzi. How could there be such a despicable person in the world? Tang Zheng, Xiao Bai, and the others were the most familiar with Tian Chanzi. It was hard to imagine that Tian Chanzi, who was usually optimistic and cheerful, had such a complicated past. The pain he had suffered was moving, and under his usual, calm, or happy appearance hid a pain that ordinary people could not bear. Everyone was in awe of him. Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi seriously. There were so many things he wanted to say, but he couldn't say them. Tian Chanzi couldn't hide the pain on his face. Recalling the past was tantamount to tearing open a scar that had been covered in dust for a long time. Taishuzi and the people of Kingshuman were stunned. This was completely different from what they had heard since they were young. Was there really so much inside story? Many people were skeptical. After all, they weren't like the others. They had deep feelings and respect for Kingshuman. It was hard for them to accept such subversive information. Taishuzi was shaken. His face turned pale and his lips trembled. After a long time, he said, "Tian Chanzi, since you have suffered so much, why didn't you say it earlier? Why did you only announce it now? Did you make it up on purpose?" Tian Chanzi's mouth twitched. This is Kingshuman's scandal. Once exposed, Kingshuman's reputation will be ruined. As a person of Kingshuman, how can I sacrifice Kingshuman's reputation for myself? If this matter didn't affect Tang Zheng, I wouldn't let these dusty past see the light of day. I see. Everyone had an expression of sudden realization. They were filled with admiration, moved by Tian Chanzi's spirit of self-sacrifice, as well as his deep feelings for the Clear Void sect. Taishuzi's eyes kept changing. He couldn't tell whether Tian Chanzi was telling the truth or not. As the leader of Kingshuman, he didn't know what to do. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't know how to deal with this matter. Tang Zheng was moved. He understood that Tian Chanzi did all this for him. Since this was the case, he had the responsibility to wash away the shame on Tian Chanzi. Tang Zheng was moved. His expression was stern. He asked, "Tian Chanzi, you collected evidence of Tian Tsang's crimes. Now you can announce it to everyone and prove your innocence." The others immediately grasped this key point. They looked at Tian Chanzi with anticipation and urged, "Yes, hurry up and announce the evidence of Tian Tsang's crimes. Then the truth will come to light. No one will suspect you anymore." Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng with gratitude. He couldn't lose the evidence of Tian Tsang's crimes. After all, He had spent a lot of effort to obtain it. It was also the evidence to prove his innocence. Tian Chanzi hesitated for a moment. Under the encouraging and expectant gazes of Tang Zheng and the others, Tian Chanzi waved his hand in the air and a light screen appeared. This light screen was very magical. It was like a movie being projected in the air. It was very clear and the people on the screen were very lifelike, as if they were about to come out. There were two different groups of people on the screen. One group had one person while the other had more than 10 people. Everyone's pupils shrank. They immediately recognized that it was Tian Congzi because there was a jade pendant on his waist with the words Tian Congzi carved on it. This is the demon race's illusion art. Those who knew their stuff immediately recognized this light screen. It was a technique of the demon race, but it didn't have any offensive power. It was a technique used to record images. This must have been recorded by the demon race when Tian Congzi was plotting with them. Tian Congzi didn't know about it. The demon race is really cunning. They actually used the illusion art. The devil clan's actions have a deep meaning. Once Tian Congzi controls the distinct void sect, his status will be high and his identity will be illustrious. Then, the devil clan will be able to use the phantom technique to record everything and use it to threaten Tian Congzi. They will make the distinct void sect their puppet and help them do things. I remember now. I once heard the seniors in the sect mention this. Back then, the righteous faction had tried to encircle and annihilate the devil race several times, but all of them returned in failure. Even the originally well-planned encirclement and annihilation that was sure to be a sure win came to nothing. It was as if someone had leaked information. However, there was no evidence and this matter was left unsettled. Could it be that someone really leaked the information to the demon race and this person was Tian Congzi? Someone had an idea and questioned. I think it's very possible. He was already the sect master of Kingshuman at that time. His status and position were very high. Naturally, no one would suspect him and no one would dare to investigate him. This matter will naturally be left unsettled, and there will be no conclusion. Everyone's analysis was clear and logical. The truth was slowly coming to light. Taishuzi stared at the screen in a daze. He obviously knew that the illusion art could not be faked. This meant that Tian Congzi was indeed in cahoots with the demon race. As for whether that person was Tian Congzi or not, Taishuzi was 100% sure. Because Kingshuman had clear portraits of the previous sect masters. Taishuzi had seen them countless times. How could he forget or be mistaken? The screen disappeared. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation. They were all members of the orthodox faction and couldn't help but feel humiliated. After Tian Chanzi finished speaking, he actually let out a sigh of relief. It was as if he had completed a part of Miao Yin's last wish. He felt a bit more at ease. Tang Zheng stared at Taishuzi with a burning gaze and asked, "You still don't believe me?" Tian Congzi frowned and had nothing to say. Tang Zheng looked around and stared at all the orthodox faction members. His voice was like a bell as he said, "Now, everyone knows who the real traitor is. Tian Congzi. Tian Congzi." Roars of anger could topple mountains and overturn seas. Many people were filled with righteousness. How could they tolerate this kind of injustice? They all shouted with hatred for a common enemy. Tang Zheng calmly nodded and said, "Yes, the real traitor is Tian Congzi. And Tian Chanzi is the most innocent. He has endured thousands of years of infamy. From today onwards, this infamy will end here. No one can think of splashing dirty water on Tian Chanzi. I also won't allow anyone to splash dirty water on Tian Chanzi." This declaration was simple and crude, but it was filled with sincerity. No one dared to question it. Taishuzi lowered his head. He could not say a single word of rebuttal. The other members of Kingshuman felt even more humiliated. Not only did they sympathize with Tian Chanzi's situation, but they were also bitterly disappointed and distressed for their sect to have such a scandal. Chapter 1688. The time had come. Wild Dog and the others shouted, "Tian Chanzi was slandered. He is not a traitor. Tian Congzi is the traitor. Yes, Tian Chanzi is the true righteous one. He is our comrade." The voices rose and fell, and no one doubted the Heaven Monk anymore. The people from the Clear Void sect looked at the Heaven Monk with eyes full of sympathy and shame, ashamed of the wrong views that they had always insisted on. However, the Kingshuman people did not dare to express their opinions directly. They looked at Taishuzi, the sect master. He was the one who had to make the decision. Taishuzi's expression kept changing. It was as if a mountain was on his shoulders. He was in a dilemma. If he cleared Tian Chanzi's name, he would have to convict Tian Tsangzi, the sect master from 1,000 years ago. As a junior, it was disgraceful. However, if he did not do so, Kingshuman's reputation would be ruined in front of everyone. He would not be able to establish himself in the righteous world. Kingshuman would be isolated. In the end, it was not hard to imagine what would happen to Kingshuman. Kingshuman was destroyed by him. He would have to bear the blame. Yes. Taishuzi took a deep breath. His eyes gradually became firm. He had made up his mind. He walked towards Heaven Monk step by step. Everyone held their breaths, knowing that this matter was about to be settled. Among them, the most nervous person was Tian Chanzi. This was related to his long-cherished wish and Sweet Sound's last wish. He could not predict the outcome. Huff. His breathing quickened. Taishuzi stood in front of Tian Chanzi. He looked serious and said firmly, "Taishuzi of Kingshuman greets Senior Tian Chanzi." Taishuzi got down on one knee and prostrated himself in front of Tian Chanzi. Everyone was silent, but everyone understood what this meant. Taishuzi admitted that Tian Chanzi was wrongly accused and nailed Tian Chanzi onto the pillar of shame. It was his decision as the sect master, as well as the decision of all the people in Kingshuman. Tian Chanzi's expression became extremely emotional. His whole body trembled, and tears glistened in his eyes. After knowing Heaven Monk for so long, Tang Zheng had never seen him like this before. His heart was filled with sorrow, and his heart was also moved. Taishuzi stood up and said respectfully, "Kingshuman welcomes Tian Chanzi back to Kingshuman." When the other members of the Clear Void sect heard this, they all knelt down on one knee and kowtowed. In unison, they said respectfully, "We respectfully invite Senior Heaven Monk to return to the Clear Void sect." Their voices were loud and resonated above everyone's heads. It shook their hearts. Tears flowed out of his eyes, and 2 lines of tears hung on Heaven Monk's cheeks. This was the goal that he had always dreamed of, and now it had finally been realized. His lips trembled, and he said intermittently, "Miao Yin. Did you hear that? I've finally returned to my sect." Everyone was moved by his emotions. Tian Chanzi started sobbing softly and squatted on the ground. He did not have any image at all, but his image in everyone's hearts was extremely high, even higher than a mountain. Taishuzi said again, "The position of the sect master of Kingshuman should have belonged to Senior Tian Chanzi. From today onwards, you are the sect master of Kingshuman." What? Taishuzi's words shocked everyone again. They looked at Taishuzi in disbelief. He was willing to hand over the position of the sect master to someone else. Few people could compare to him. Tian Chanzi looked up and shook his head. He ignored the tears on his face and said, "No. How can this be? The position of the sect master belongs to you. How can I be the sect master?" Taishuzi's tone was firm as he said sincerely, "Back then, Senior should have inherited the position of sect master, but it was snatched away by Tian Chanzi's scheming, causing the distinct Void sect's reputation to be tarnished. Now that you have taken over the position of the sect master, Kingshuman is finally back on the right path. Please don't refuse." Tian Chanzi was speechless. He did not know how to refute. His biggest wish was to return to Kingshuman. He did not covet the position of the sect master. To him, power was nothing more than a passing cloud. Taishuzi did not give him a chance to refuse. He knelt down again and said, "Taishuzi of Kingshuman greets the sect master." "Greetings, sect master." The other Kingshuman people also knelt down again. Tian Chanzi looked at the group of disciples who knelt down. He was filled with emotions and did not know what to do. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth revealed a gratified smile, and advised, "Heaven Monk, this is what everyone wants. Besides, as Taishuzi said, you are the sect master to put an end to Kingshuman's past and create a future for Kingshuman. Please don't refuse." Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng in a daze. Did he really have the right to be the sect master? After all, he had been away from Kingshuman for so long. However, Tang Zheng's encouraging look gave him great courage and motivation. Phew! He heavily exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and recovered his solemn expression. Looking at everyone in the distinct void sect, he said in a deep voice, "Many thanks for everyone's love. I will definitely not disappoint everyone's kind intentions. From now on, our distinct void sect will be united as one, and we will once again regain our former glory and glory." The clear void sect all raised their heads, their eyes filled with fervor. The Heaven Monk had said what they had always wished for. Kingshuman used to be one of the most prestigious sects in Kingshuman. However, it had fallen so far. Everyone in Kingshuman was disappointed and did not want to return to the glory of the past. However, their talents had withered. Even Taishuzi, the sect master, was not as good as the other sects. How could they rise among the orthodox sects? However, things were different now. With Tian Chanzi, Kingshuman would truly rise. Besides, Tian Chanzi and Tang Zheng were very close. Kingshuman had all the advantages. How could they not rise? Kingshuman people stood up. They straightened their backs and stuck out their chests. Their spirits seemed to have changed. The others were filled with emotions. Wild Dog looked from Tian Chanzi to Tang Zheng. He said loudly, "The truth is out. Tian Chanzi is not a traitor. Therefore, Tang Zheng is the rightful sect master. Does anyone have any objections?" No one in Kingshuman has any objections. We support the new alliance master. Taishuzi was the first to express his stance. The other Kingshuman people followed suit. The distinct void sect's rise was imminent, and all of this was thanks to Tang Zheng. Even though the distinct void sect's reputation had been affected to a certain extent, but in the future, when they rise, this little bit of influence would not be worth mentioning. If Tian Chanzi did not return, Taishuzi could not guarantee how long Kingshuman would last. Perhaps they would disappear from the world in the near future. Comparing the two, the current situation was the best outcome. The others did not have any objections. They all expressed their agreement. Tian Chanzi returned the favor. He stepped forward and bowed to Tang Zheng respectfully. He shouted loudly, "Greetings, Alliance Master! Greetings, Alliance Master!" The others were either convinced from the bottom of their hearts or forced by the situation. All of them bowed down to Tang Zheng and shouted loudly, their voices toppling the mountains and overturning the seas, shaking everyone's hearts. For the latest novel to read, please visit Chapter 1689. All of the righteous faction members kowtowed to Tang Zheng. Not only that, Xiao Bai also kowtowed. His kowtow naturally led the elder ancestor and the others to kowtow as well. Yi Dingdang giggled and also kowtowed mischievously. When the others saw this, how could they not kowtow? Thus, in this huge space in the boorish desolation, other than Tang Zheng who was standing alone, everyone else kowtowed to Tang Zheng. Their movements were neat and uniform, and their momentum was like a rainbow. Tang Zheng was not an indecisive person. He needed the strength of the righteous faction. Since the righteous faction had pledged their allegiance, whether it was out of sincerity or because of the situation, he did not care. Naturally, there was no reason for him to refuse. He swept his gaze around in a dignified manner and said lightly, "It would be impolite to refuse. Then I will take up the position of alliance leader. Everyone, rise." Their goal was achieved. Everyone stood up and looked at Tang Zheng with complicated gazes. There was no lack of excitement and suspicion. Tang Zheng did not mind. He was confident that in time, he could make these people pledge their allegiance to him wholeheartedly. Double happiness came at once. Tian Chanzi took over as sect leader and Tang Zheng became alliance leader. The righteous faction seemed to have gained a backbone. The boorish desolation underground was a scene of joy and harmony. There was no sign of the hostility and danger from before. A new broom sweeps clean. Everyone was paying attention to Tang Zheng, waiting for him to come up with a new countermeasure to resist Hao Tianwang's attack. Tang Zheng had already thought of a countermeasure. He was confident and threw out the heavenly chess. Most people did not understand the power of the heavenly chess. They could not help but be puzzled. They did not know what was so special about the heavenly chess that Tang Zheng would give it so much hope. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry to explain. There was no proof for this kind of thing. Only when everyone witnessed it with their own eyes would they be able to understand its profoundness and essence. No one disobeyed Tang Zheng's orders. They all followed his instructions and arranged the heavenly chess. Tang Zheng knew the heavenly chess like the back of his hand. He was not inferior to the creator of the heavenly chess, Ji Wuxiang. Furthermore, Tang Zheng's knowledge far surpassed Ji Wuxiang's. Therefore, Tang Zheng was the only one who knew that the new heavenly chess was slightly different from the original heavenly chess. The celestial chess covered a huge area. The celestial chess was set up in the wildlands and the surrounding areas. Tang Zheng knew this area like the back of his hand even without the need for soldiers to investigate. Nothing could escape his notice. After all, the wildlands was a wasteland where not even a blade of grass grew. It was not a good idea for them to hide here for too long. The celestial chess could protect the boorish land and prevent them from being completely annihilated. However, they still had to think of other ways to find a breakthrough. Everyone knew that taking back Sky Beyond Sky was going to be a long battle, so they had to be prepared for a long battle. Before the army moved, the provisions would move first. This was a well-known fact. Although a cultivator's dependence on food had decreased a lot, a cultivator still needed to eat in the end. It was just a matter of time. Therefore, the food problem needed to be solved urgently. Many of the righteous faction's treasures had been destroyed by Tang Zheng. Moreover, the entire righteous faction's treasures were very outdated. Not to mention holy artifacts, there were not even many heaven-grade treasures. Therefore, collecting materials and refining treasures was the most important thing. However, the 9 revolving pill furnace was still in the hands of the King of Medicine. They could only collect materials for the time being. As a native of Sky Beyond Sky, the elder ancestor understood Sky Beyond Sky the most. He was also not unfamiliar with the wildlands. After hearing Tang Zheng's words, he could not help but fall into deep thought. The others began to discuss and brainstorm. They all wanted to contribute a little bit of their strength. Collecting these things in the wildlands is like trying to get fish from a tree. It's impossible. The elder ancestor said decisively. This was like a bucket of cold water being poured over their heads. Everyone quivered and looked at the elder ancestor, their eyes asking why. The wildlands is a wasteland. How can there be food and raw materials for refining treasures? The elder ancestor explained. Tang Zheng thought, if a wasteland can be turned into an oasis like a desert, then wouldn't the wildlands be turned into fertile land? However, this would require the Tree of Life. When he thought of the Tree of Life, Tang Zheng thought of the fire Qilin. This was a divine beast. If he could tame the fire Qilin, it would be a great help. As long as he could find the Tree of Life, it would not be difficult to find the fire Qilin. Sky Beyond Sky was a large world. Naturally, there would be a Tree of Life. Tang Zheng could not hold back his curiosity and hurriedly asked, "Where is the Tree of Life in Sky Beyond Sky?" The Tree of Life was very important. If the Tree of Life could be moved to the wildlands, then wouldn't the wildlands be turned into an oasis? The problem of ingredients would be easily solved. Everyone looked at the elder ancestor, hoping to hear the whereabouts of the Tree of Life from him. Unexpectedly, the elder ancestor's eyes were tightly knit together. He said with a frown, "What is the Tree of Life? I've never seen it before. Naturally, I don't know where it is." Tang Zheng stared at the elder ancestor with a burning gaze. Seeing that he was not joking, he could not help but be stunned for a moment. He said nervously, "The Tree of Life is the foundation of the great wide world. The Tree of Life can change the weather and spiritual qi, turning a desert into an oasis. You've lived in Sky Beyond Sky for so many years. How could you have never heard of the Tree of Life?" The elder ancestor nodded with certainty. "I've indeed never heard of it. The others can testify that no one in Sky Beyond Sky has ever heard of the Tree of Life." Tang Zheng turned to stare at Xiao Bai and asked, "Xiao Bai, do you not have the Tree of Life in your memories of Sky Beyond Sky?" Xiao Bai was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he closed his eyes and searched for the information passed down by the imperial family. There was too much information and too mixed. He did not have time to completely sort it out. Therefore, he was not sure if there was any information about the tree of life in these memories. He could only sharpen his knife and search on the spot. Tang Zheng knew a little about it, so he did not disturb him and waited quietly for him. After a long time, Xiao Bai suddenly opened his eyes. The look in his eyes was very strange. There was a mixture of joy and doubt. "How is it?" Tang Zheng hurriedly asked. The others also looked at Xiao Bai curiously. Xiao Bai said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid that you won't believe me even if I tell you, but there's indeed no tree of life in sky beyond sky." "What?" Tang Zheng's expression changed, and he exclaimed, "The tree of life is the foundation of the great wide world. How can sky beyond sky not have it?" The others also nodded. Clearly, they could not understand this question. Xiao Bai's mouth curled into an unfathomable smile. The great wide world doesn't have to have a tree of life. The tree of life is only unique to some great wide worlds. The tree of life is just a representation, and it will have different representations in different worlds. Tang Zheng had an idea and asked, "Are you saying that the foundation of sky beyond sky is something else, which is equivalent to the tree of life in the human world?" Xiao Bai nodded. Tang Zheng opened his mouth in shock. The others were also dumbfounded. They did not expect this truth. Tang Zheng recovered from his shock. He collected his thoughts and asked curiously, "What's the foundation of sky beyond sky?" Xiao Bai opened his mouth and softly spat out 2 words. When everyone heard this, their expressions changed greatly. Their expressions were very interesting. They never dreamed that the foundation of sky beyond sky was this. The great wide world was really full of strange things. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1690. Kuan Peng. Those were the 2 words that Xiao Bai said. Although his voice was not loud, it was so loud that everyone was stunned. Not only Tang Zheng and the rest, but most of the people from the righteous path had seen the Kuan Peng before. They were shocked when they heard that the Kuan Peng was the foundation of the Outland, which was equivalent to the Tree of Life. Tang Zheng did not expect the Kuan Peng to have such an identity. After a while, he regained his senses and asked, "Why is the Kuan Peng the foundation of the Outland?" Xiao Bai shrugged and said, "This is what the imperial family's memory told me. I don't know the reason." Tang Zheng revealed a look of disappointment. The old ancestor came back to his senses and said thoughtfully, "Back then, the late emperor and empress favored the Kuan Peng a lot. Although the Kuan Peng didn't take any position, its status was extraordinary. Many people didn't understand the reason. Now, it seems that the late emperor knew that the Kuan Peng was the foundation of the Outland, so he could not be neglected." Red Moon was enlightened and said, "I was still angry that the Kuan Peng betrayed the late emperor and followed Hao Tianwang. Now, it seems that the Kuan Peng did not take a stand." The elder ancestor nodded in agreement. "That makes sense." Tang Zheng remembered the reason why the Outland invaded the human world. They moved the cultivators to the Outland to repair the foundation of the Outland. In order to seize the Outland, Hao Tianwang damaged the foundation of the Outland during the war with the imperial family. The Outland was in danger and was downgraded from a macroscopic world to a microcosm. Perhaps the Kuan Peng was injured during the war, so the foundation of the Outland was damaged. Hao Tianwang had no choice but to repair it. In other words, Hao Tianwang did not know that the Kuan Peng was the foundation of the Outland, but he must have found out later. But after careful consideration of this matter, he couldn't help but be shocked. The Kuan Peng had the divine power of giving someone a taste of their own medicine, but it was injured during the war. It showed how tragic and earth-shattering the war was. This also meant that the Kuan Peng's divine ability was not omnipotent. As long as one's strength reached a certain level, one could also break this divine ability. Since Kuan Peng is the foundation of sky beyond sky, then naturally it can't always fall into the hands of Hao Tianwang. "We must find a way to take it back," Tang Zheng said firmly. The others nodded as well. In the past, they did not know the importance of the Kuan Peng, so they did not pay attention to it. But things were different now. Not to mention whether or not the Kuan Peng could turn the wasteland into an oasis, just the fact that it was the foundation of the outland meant that it had to be in his hands. Xiao Bai said worriedly, "The Kuan Peng doesn't listen to our orders. How can we take it back?" Tang Zheng said with a smile, "Kuan Peng doesn't listen to our orders, but it doesn't necessarily listen to Hao Tianwang's orders." "What do you mean? Didn't the Kuan Peng carry Hao Tianwang's army to attack the Suicide Valley? If the Kuan Peng really listened to Hao Tianwang's orders, then Hao Tianwang wouldn't have escaped with his tail between his legs. Because, if the Kuan Peng could reflect attacks, then Hao Tianwang would be in an invincible position. Why would he need to be afraid of our counterattack?" In the past, Tang Zheng would not have thought of this, but ever since he knew the true identity of the Kuan Peng, this point had suddenly become clear. Hey! When the others heard this, their eyes lit up, as if they had never thought of this before. If not for Tang Zheng's reminder, they probably would not have thought of it so quickly. Xiao Bai's eyes lit up, and he clicked his tongue in wonder. That makes sense. I'm afraid that Hao Tianwang cannot completely control the Kuan Peng, which gives us an opportunity to take advantage of it. Tang Zheng nodded his head in relief. The others also revealed looks of joy, eager to give it a try, and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Right, let's hurry up and snatch the Kuan Peng back. I have a feeling that once we snatch the Kuan Peng back, our chances of victory will be much higher." Everyone's gazes landed on Tang Zheng, waiting for his decision. Tang Zheng muttered to himself, "Indeed, so we have to make a trip to the Imperial City." The Kuan Peng was in the Imperial City, which was Hao Tianwang's base camp. It was like going deep into the tiger's den. Everyone's expressions also became serious. This was an extremely dangerous mission. If they were not careful, they could lose their lives. Everyone realized this, but no one retreated. Instead, they fought to be the first to do so. Yi Dingdang anxiously declared, "I'm going to the Imperial City. I've never been to the Imperial City before. Only by going once will this trip not be in vain." Her tone was relaxed, as if she did not care about the danger at all. Wu and Liu Qingmai were not willing to fall behind, and rushed to say, "I'll go too." Other than a few people from the righteous faction, the others quickly followed suit, unwilling to fall behind. Among the righteous faction's people, there were many sect leaders from the great sects. They were not familiar with Tang Zheng and the others, but when they saw how fearless they were, they could not help but turn pale. The Imperial City and Hao Tianwang are so terrifying, but this group of people are not afraid at all. They could not understand this kind of boldness and courage. These past few years, they had been hiding and keeping a respectful distance, afraid that Hao Tianwang would attack them. This group of people actually took the initiative to deliver themselves to them. Tang Zheng indifferently looked at the righteous faction, seeing through their thoughts, but he did not care and said, "If so many people go, wouldn't that be too eye-catching? We cannot avoid a big battle this time. We are not going to go sightseeing." Pausing for a moment, his gaze fell on Yi Dingdang as he solemnly said, "Wasn't the place we transmigrated to above the Imperial City? You've already seen the Imperial City, why do you need to make another trip?" Yi Dingdang was not convinced, but that was just a glance from afar. "We did not go in, how could we appreciate its elegance? The Imperial City is not elegant." Tang Zheng waved his hand, completely cutting off Yi Dingdang's thoughts, and said, "Tian Chanzi, you will stay in the Boorish lands. Xiao Bai, the Four Symbols, Azura, and I will go to the Imperial City, the others will stay in the Boorish lands. This is our base, this is our foundation, we cannot give it up." Tian Chanzi did not object. He had just returned to Kingshuman, and was also the new sect leader. He had to sort out the Kingshuman from top to bottom and formulate a plan for future development, so he could not leave. The elder ancestor, Kai Yeye, and the witch tribe obviously did not want to stay in the Boorish lands. They all wanted to charge and break through the enemy lines. If it was any other situation, Tang Zheng naturally would not go against their wishes, but this time it was really too dangerous. He did not have the confidence. How could he bear to let his subordinates take the risk? Although some people were unwilling, they could not refute Tang Zheng, and could only accept all the arrangements. When the news that they were going to enter the tiger's den spread, it caused quite a stir in the righteous faction. Everyone was worried, and a new problem arose spontaneously. Tang Zheng was carefully preparing to go to the imperial city, but Tian Chanzi and the other sect leaders came looking for him. Tang Zheng looked at the group of sect leaders in astonishment. Sect leaders, why are you looking for me? At this juncture, this group of people definitely came together for an important matter, which made them very puzzled. What exactly was it that made them gather so many people? To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1691. The few sect leaders looked at each other in dismay, their faces filled with hesitation, as though they did not dare to say it directly. After a long while, they recommended Heaven Monk and said, "Sect leader Heaven Monk, why don't you say it?" Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi curiously. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes speechlessly and said bluntly, "Leaders, since you can freely travel between the human world and the heavens beyond, when can you return to the human world?" Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He had actually overlooked such a crucial question. For the righteous path, they did not care about taking back the heavens beyond. Since there was hope of returning to the human world, they naturally cared more about this point. Pairs of burning eyes looked at Tang Zheng, waiting for his answer. Tang Zheng muttered, "Leaders, although we came from the human world, if we want to return to the human world, it is not an easy task." "Why?" The leaders' faces changed slightly, and someone asked. Tang Zheng already had a countermeasure, and said, "Because there are too many people in the righteous path. With my skills, there is no way to bring so many people back." Although the space of Sumeru heavens was huge, it was still another space. When passing through the space door, Sumeru heavens and the space door would have some kind of impact. This required Tang Zheng to use his skills to resolve this impact. This was what Tang Zheng learned the last time he passed through the space door. In the past, he thought that using Sumeru heavens to bring many people through the space door would be easy. But in the end, he found that he was wrong. The more people there were in Sumeru heavens, the more difficult it would be for him to pass through the space door. There were so many people in the righteous path, how could he bring all of them back to the human world? If he brought them back in batches, it would cause unfairness and dissatisfaction, so he might as well let them all stay in the heavens beyond. The situation in the human world was already different from hundreds of years ago. This group of righteous path faced the problem of life and death in the heavens beyond. But if they returned to the human world, they would be absolute powerhouses. He could not imagine what kind of problems the human world would face at that time. The key point was that he did not have the energy to deal with this problem, so he could only delay it for now. In addition, if he wanted to take back the heavens beyond heaven, he would need the help of this group of righteous path. In this process, he could clearly see who was truly trustworthy. Regardless of whether it was out of selfishness or righteousness, Tang Zheng could not agree to the righteous path so quickly. He pondered for a while and said awkwardly, "Passing through the space gate is not an easy task. I don't have the ability to bring everyone back to the human world for the time being." As soon as he said that, the sect leaders' expressions changed. One of them said, "The outer sky is so dangerous. How can we not leave as soon as possible?" In the past, they had no hope of leaving. Now that they had a glimmer of hope, how could they be willing to stay in heavens beyond? Tang Zheng looked at everyone with a scorching gaze. "I'm not afraid even if I stay in the realm beyond heaven with all of you, so what do you have to be afraid of? Moreover, there is a celestial chess set up in the wildlands. As long as you don't leave the wildlands, you will be safe." All the sect leaders cursed in their hearts. What's so great about heavenly chess? They couldn't tell at all. As for your strength, of course they weren't worried. "We weren't as powerful as you." However, they could only swallow these words in their hearts. They didn't dare to say it out loud. They said resentfully, "We've been away from the human world for too long. Everyone misses home too much." Tang Zheng laughed coldly. This excuse was too old-fashioned. There was nothing new about it. It was just fooling a 3-year-old child. Tian Chanzi also understood the thoughts of these sect leaders. He was quite angry. They had just joined Tang Zheng's side, and they were already making demands. Were they really that afraid of death? "I, Tian Chanzi, have died once. I'm not afraid of death." Tian Chanzi stepped forward bravely and said passionately, "At least there is one righteous person who hasn't left heavens beyond heaven. Then I will not leave heavens beyond heaven for one day. Now all the sect leaders should be satisfied, right? All the sect leaders looked at Tian Chanzi in astonishment. They didn't expect him to stand up so boldly. These bold words made them flabbergasted. Tian Chanzi's eyes were firm. He didn't allow anyone to question him. You're exaggerating. Tian Chanzi is a noble sect leader. How can he be the last to leave heavens beyond heaven? Someone hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Tian Chanzi didn't appreciate it at all. He stubbornly said, I've already said my piece. Everyone just wait and see. Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi gratefully. This action resolved everything. Everyone knew that Tian Chanzi and Tang Zheng had a close relationship. He was willing to be the last to leave heavens beyond heaven. How could the others be dissatisfied? Even if there were complaints, they were all blocked. All the sect leaders looked at each other and secretly shook their heads. They knew that there was no reason to continue speaking. They all said goodbye to Tang Zheng and left resentfully. Tian Chanzi looked at their departing figures. His expression became complicated. He sighed and said, this group of short-sighted people. How can the righteous path become like this today? Tang Zheng wasn't surprised. The special environment of heavens beyond heaven had caused all of this. They did everything for survival, so naturally, they would become much more selfish. He said, don't worry. Their hopes are on me, so they have to listen to my orders. I'm worried that when they return to the human world in the future, your identity as the alliance leader may not be able to command them. At that time, they will be in a state of disunity. It's hard to predict what will happen. Tian Chanzi shook his head and sighed. Tang Zheng wasn't worried. He smiled faintly and said, when they return to the human world, the martial artists in Dianan will be strong enough. Moreover, I will set up as many heavens chess pieces as possible. If they want to do anything wrong, they can only lift a stone and smash it on their own feet. Tian Chanzi nodded secretly and said, since you have a countermeasure, I won't say more. This episode didn't affect the established plan. The day of departure was coming. These few days, everyone was carefully preparing, conserving their energy, and adjusting their condition to the best. Even if there was a fierce battle, they were not afraid at all. At the edge of the barbarian land, several leaders of the righteous path, Yi Dingdang, the three girls, the great ancestor, and the witch tribe stood in front of Tang Zheng and the others. They were reluctant to part and waved goodbye. The three girls kept reminding Tang Zheng to be careful and return safely. Tang Zheng felt their intentions and was full of pride. He patted his chest to reassure them. The great ancestor and the others looked at Xiao Bai worriedly. Although Xiao Bai's cultivation was already at the 8th grade of the Mahayana realm, which was the highest among everyone, the great ancestor couldn't help but worry. After all, the imperial city was a tiger's den. It was the enemy's base camp. It was hard to predict what kind of changes and dangers would happen. The red lunar beast also joined the great ancestor's team. They tried their best to persuade Xiao Bai to change his mind and bring them along to take care of him. Xiao Bai turned his head and glanced at Tang Zheng. He didn't change his mind at all. The great ancestor and the red lunar beast's last efforts were in vain. All right, then let's go. Everyone, wait for our triumphant return with the Kuanpeng. Tang Zheng waved his hand and said proudly. Chapter 1692. In the sky above the imperial city, a white cloud floated over and blended in with the other clouds. The night was like water, and the somersault cloud's movements were inconspicuous. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai felt the biting cold night wind and looked into the distance, sizing up the imperial city. Under the curtain of night, the imperial city lit up with lights, like the stars in the sky. It was no longer as noisy as it was during the day. In an instant, it regained its peace, as if someone had pressed the mute button. They deliberately waited until the night to act, because sneaking into the imperial city at night was the least likely way to be discovered. Master, where do you think Hao Tianwang hid the Kuanpeng's huge body? Xiao Bai was puzzled and asked curiously. The last time they sneaked into the imperial city, they did not see the Kuanpeng, so they were very curious about its hiding place. How did your imperial family place the Kuanpeng? Tang Zheng asked casually. In the memory I inherited, there is no special information about the Kuan Peng. It is completely free. It can go anywhere it wants. Tang Zheng smiled and said, how Tianwang would not raise the Kuan Peng like this. Since he knows the importance of the Kuan Peng, he would naturally hold it firmly in his hands. The imperial city is so big, then where are we going to find the Kuan Peng? Xiao Bai asked worriedly. Tang Zheng's gaze was deep. There were only 4 people in this trip. Other than him and Xiao Bai, the 4 symbols and Azura were temporarily staying in Sumeru world. They were alone and could not make any mistakes. Tang Zheng's gaze fell on the patrolling guards in the imperial city and said thoughtfully, let's capture someone and ask. Xiao Bai immediately understood Tang Zheng's thoughts and volunteered, I'll do it. The 2 of them pressed down on the cloud and quietly landed. During the day, the imperial city was heavily guarded, hundreds of times more than when they sneaked in. Obviously, after the Battle of the Suicide Valley, Hao Tianwang was jittery, afraid that the enemy would sneak into the imperial city again. But how could such a huge city wall not have any loopholes? How could it be absolutely safe? Especially in front of this kind of Xiozhe who came and went, the city walls and city guards could become decorations. At this moment, Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai had sneaked into the imperial city without anyone noticing. However, when they were at the imperial city gate, the 2 of them saw several corpses that were hung high up on the city gate for public display. The 2 of them had witnessed the entire process during the day. The city guards had caught a few suspicious people and declared them to be spies. Then, they were immediately hung on the city gates and tortured to death. The 2 of them were really shocked by this scene. They didn't expect Hao Tianwang to be so crazy as to use this kind of torture in front of their own home, indiscriminately taking people's lives. As for spies and enemies, that was nonsense. Tang Zheng had never sent anyone to the imperial city, so how could there be any spies? This was completely because Hao Tianwang had a guilty conscience and became a frightened bird, which was why he committed such a bloody crime. At that time, Xiao Bai was gnashing his teeth in hatred. These people were his people, but they were ruled by Hao Tianwang's tyranny. He understood the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders even more. Not only did he want to take back the glory and honor that belonged to the imperial family, he also wanted to save his own people from the fire and water. After the 2 of them sneaked into the imperial city, Xiao Bai still couldn't help but look at the city gate, and said in a low voice, Master, I will definitely make Hao Tianwang pay the price. If you want to destroy them, you have to make them crazy first. This is Hao Tianwang's last carnival. The more he does this, the more unpopular he will be. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat. If he loses the hearts of the people, how far can he go? Tang Zheng sneered and said disdainfully. Xiao Bai was confused and didn't completely understand Tang Zheng's meaning. Tang Zheng looked at him and said earnestly, in the future, when you become the king of sky beyond sky, you must treat your own people well. Xiao Bai patted his chest and said with a matter-of-fact expression, I am not a thug like Hao Tianwang. Naturally, I will treat my own people well. After saying this, Xiao Bai's ears trembled. He raised a finger and said in a low voice, Master, the city guards are coming. The imperial city was heavily guarded, and the city guards had increased the intensity of their patrols. Therefore, they encountered the city guards as soon as they entered. Xiao Bai said eagerly, Master, wait here. I will catch them for questioning. Xiao Bai didn't give Tang Zheng a chance to object. In a flash, he disappeared into the night. There wasn't any big movement. After a while, Xiao Bai came back with an enemy. Master, this is their leader, a city guard. He must know a lot of information. Xiao Bai clapped his hands and said. The city guard looked at Tang Zheng in panic. He wanted to shout loudly, but he couldn't say a word. It was as if his throat was blocked by something. Don't waste your energy. Xiao Bai patted the city guard's shoulder. If you move again, you will be like your subordinates and die immediately. The city guard heard this and became obedient. He looked at the 2 people in horror. His heart was shocked. These 2 people were really bold. The imperial city was heavily guarded, but they still dared to sneak in. I ask you, where is the Kuan Peng? Time was tight, so Tang Zheng asked directly. The city guard thought that the other side was going to ask about something, but it was actually about the Kuan Peng. He couldn't help but open his eyes wide, not understanding what was going on. Xiao Bai patted his body and removed the restriction spell. He urged, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and answer. Don't play any tricks. You know how powerful I am." The city guard trembled and said with a bitter face, "I also don't know." Xiao Bai's face hardened and said, "You dare to play tricks? You don't want to say it? Then you will have a taste of it. Wait a minute." Xiao Bai was about to make a move when Tang Jing hurriedly stopped him. "I ask you, the Kuan Peng is so big. It is not inferior to the imperial city. Once it comes back, how can it disappear from under your eyes? How can you not know where it went? The Kuan Peng can be big or small. Once it returns to the imperial city, it will become small. How can people like us know where it went?" The city guard said with a bitter face. "The Kuan Peng can be big or small?" Tang Jing frowned suspiciously. The 2 times he saw the Kuan Peng, he only saw its huge body. He didn't think that it could become small. Tang Jing turned his head to look at Xiao Bai and asked, "Is it like this in your memory?" Xiao Bai shook his head firmly, "Of course not. In my memory, the Kuan Peng is very big. How can it become small?" Master, one look and you can tell that he is talking nonsense. Why don't you just use the soul-searching technique? He can't hide any secrets. Xiao Bai's suggestion made Tang Zheng's head move. At this crucial moment, he couldn't make any mistakes. It seemed that he could only use the soul-searching technique. You can only blame yourself for listening to Hao Tianwang. Also, you usually do too many evil things. Tang Zheng muttered in his heart. His big hand grabbed the city guard envoy's head, and a message was transmitted to his mind. "Master, how is it?" Seeing him let go of his hand, Xiao Bai impatiently asked. "He is not lying." Tang Zheng's face turned cold as he suspiciously said, "My new book Immortal Cultivation Master on campus has been released. It is even more interesting. Please support it. If you can't find the new book, please follow the official WeChat account, Tang Xiao. To read the latest novel, please visit the website." Chapter 1693. Xiao Bai looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief and asked, "He's not lying? How is that possible?" In Xiao Bai's memory, the Kuan Peng could not freely change its size, so it was hard to accept this reality. Tang Zheng thought about it and said, "Maybe something happened later on that caused the Kuan Peng to change. Is there really such a possibility?" Xiao Bai was skeptical. Tang Zheng nodded with certainty. The Kuan Peng is the foundation of the outer sky. Like the Tree of Life, it has many unpredictable characteristics, so we can't rule out this possibility. Xiao Bai pouted resentfully and said, "All right. If the Kuan Peng becomes smaller, the target will be smaller. It can be anywhere, so how are we going to find it?" Tang Zheng looked up at the city in the sky. Last time, they could reach the city in the sky from the Imperial Graveyard, but this time, they might not be able to do the same. Hao Tianwang would definitely investigate the previous invasion thoroughly, but it was unknown whether he would find the transportation formation, so it was better to be careful. After listening to Tang Zheng's analysis, Xiao Bai felt that it was very reasonable, but now, how to find the Kuan Peng was the most important thing. Tang Zheng stared at the city in the sky in the distance. The imperial city was polarized and had a strict hierarchy. The people who lived in the city in the sky were the real privileged class of the outer sky. The lives of the ordinary people were not happy, they were completely oppressed, but the power of the privileged class was too strong, so the ordinary people could not resist at all. Resistance meant death. Just like those corpses that were hung on the city gate for public display, there was no conclusive evidence at all, so the city guards could kill them if they wanted to. This was a world of difference from when the imperial family ruled the outer sky. At that time, the people lived and worked. How could it be so miserable? Xiao Bai also looked at the city in the sky and said, "Master, if we can't find the Kuan Peng, why don't we take the initiative to attack and lure the snake out of its hole?" Tang Zheng looked at Xiao Bai approvingly and said, "Smart." The two of them had the same thought. They couldn't keep wasting time like this. After all, there were only the two of them. They were a small target and had high mobility. If they took the initiative to attack, they would have a way to escape. Unless Heavenly Monarch Hao personally intervened, it would not be easy to keep the two of them at the 7th and 8th grade of the Mahayana realm. The two hit it off immediately, and Tang Jing said, "Xiaobai, do you know what's supporting Sky City? Why can it float in the air? Sky City is a floating city. As for why it can float, there's nothing special about it. It's just like the floating mountains we saw before. There are many floating mountains in outer heaven, and Sky City is just one of them." Tang Zheng was suddenly enlightened. He had thought that Sky City was supported by some kind of energy. Where is that light pillar? In addition to the function of the teleportation array, the pillar of light can also stabilize Sky City and prevent it from floating freely. The other mountains are floating indefinitely unless they are fixed by some special magic. Sky City is a symbol of Hao Tianwang's power. His rule is so cruel that it has long been angry, but everyone just doesn't dare to say anything. If Sky City is destroyed or damaged, Hao Tianwang's authority will definitely be greatly challenged and weakened, which is a good thing for us. Tang Zheng thought. This time, when he came to the Imperial City, Tang Zheng made a special trip to investigate the specific situation of Outer Heaven. He found that the power and resources of Outer Heaven were all concentrated in the Imperial City and Sky City. The other places were relatively barren, and ordinary people lived in an abyss of suffering. If he had just taken a quick look, he wouldn't have discovered this. This discovery made him feel like he had found a treasure, and he had new thoughts and gains. It turned out that Hao Tianwang's rule over Outer Heaven was not iron. There had been an undercurrent surging for a long time, and he was just waiting for an opportunity to break through this window paper. Xiao Bai was very much in favor of Tang Zheng's plan. Although Sky City was magnificent, in Xiao Bai's opinion, there was a lot of corruption hidden in it, and it was better to destroy it. The two of them made up their minds and quietly sneaked toward Sky City. Along the way, there was a guard every 5 steps, and a sentry every 3 steps. The closer they got to Sky City, the tighter the security became, and there was a suffocating sense of oppression. "You're so scared because you have a guilty conscience." Xiao Bai lowered his voice and said with gritted teeth. Although the security was tight, the cultivation of these people was far inferior to the two of them. Therefore, they successfully sneaked to the bottom of Sky City, not far from the teleportation light pillar. This light pillar is protected by a formation, so it won't be so easy to destroy it. Xiao Bai reminded. Formation? Hehe, I know a little about it. Tang Zheng was full of confidence. If it was said that his understanding of formations before was only at the beginner level, ever since he completely comprehended heavenly chess, he actually had a deeper understanding of formations by analogy. This understanding was not something that ordinary people could compare to. His current level of formations could be said to be at the Grandmaster level. It was just that he rarely used formations, so he did not show it. Heavenly chess and formations had many similarities. Heavenly chess was more complicated than formations. Heavenly chess was the principle that if one method was understood, all methods would be understood. Tang Zheng used his divine sense, and his divine sense wandered. Without anyone noticing, he wandered to the light pillar. His divine sense spread underground, and soon found some clues. This was indeed a large formation. The formation was connected to the entire Imperial City, and it was powered by the Imperial City's Qi channels. The formation was powerful, and its defensive power was extremely strong. It could firmly protect the light pillar. Based on this, Hao Tianwang could sit back and relax. He was not worried about the light pillar at all. This was a formation that had been reinforced by generations of imperial family. It should have been unbreakable. If they met an ordinary cultivator, they could forget about breaking the formation without anyone noticing. Unfortunately, they met Tang Zheng. He was proficient in heavenly chess, and already had a very deep foundation in formations. Furthermore, he had many unique insights and perspectives that others could not compare to. Tang Zheng carefully studied this large formation, and indeed spent a lot of energy. Finally, the corners of his mouth hooked up into a smile, and he thought to himself, I finally found the trick. Watch me break the formation. His divine sense cut into the key point of the formation, and a slight power quietly changed. The city guards guarding around the light pillar did not notice it at all. The formation was broken, and the defensive power of the formation was crumbling bit by bit. Tang Zheng withdrew his divine sense, and glanced at Xiao Bai, who had an anxious look on his face, and said, "It's a success. The formation has been broken. In just a while, this formation will completely disintegrate without anyone noticing. Then, we can move." Xiao Bai's eyes were full of extraordinary splendor, and he was a little in disbelief. After all, that large formation was so powerful that he was completely helpless. But Tang Zheng had done it in 3 to 5 minutes. This was too heaven-defying. Xiao Bai took a deep breath, calming the stormy waves in his heart, and said, "Then let's start now. We'll destroy this light pillar and shake Sky City's foundation." Both of their eyes erupted with fanaticism, and they attacked at the same time. Chapter 1694. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai gathered their energy, and the hidden mystic sword and the bloodthirsty scepter flew out together. The two rays of light flew towards the light pillar in front of everyone's eyes. Net these two attacks were not concealed at all. Even if they were so powerful, they could not be concealed. The city guards were shocked. They did not expect that the core area of the imperial city would be attacked. They hurriedly shouted and tried to stop the two attacks. However, these two attacks were so powerful that they were simply not something they could intercept. Thus, the first city guard to stop them turned into a wisp of green smoke and died on the spot. The others were stunned. They did not expect this wave of attack to be so powerful. Boom! Boom! The two loud sounds shook the sky and the earth. The light pillar trembled violently. All the city guards swayed and could not stand steadily. However, this was far less than the shock in their hearts. They had never seen anyone attack the light pillar. Because, word of mouth, everyone knew that the light pillar was unimaginably powerful. Moreover, there was a defensive array around the light pillar. Why did the defensive array not activate this time and let the light pillar withstand this wave of attack? They could not figure it out. They were completely stunned by this scene. Whoosh! The hidden mystic sword and the bloodthirsty scepter flew back to their respective owners. Before the city guards could react, they had already disappeared from their sight. There was no trace of them at all. "Hurry up and catch the enemy." A city guard finally reacted and screamed hysterically. The other city guards woke up from their daze and prepared to search for the enemy. However, before they could do anything, someone pointed at the light pillar and shouted in shock, "Look!" The city guards subconsciously stopped and stared at the light pillar. A crack appeared on the light pillar and quickly spread. After a while, there were many cracks on the light pillar. They were densely packed and looked like they were going to spread to the entire light pillar. Everyone was shocked and did not know what to do. They had never encountered such a situation before. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai hid in the dark and saw this scene. They looked at each other and smiled. They knew that they had achieved their goal. The light pillar was destroyed, and the city in the sky would be on the verge of collapse. The first step of luring the snake out of its hole is complete. Once the chaos starts, we'll be able to fish in troubled waters. Back in the city in the sky, night had fallen and the imperial city was silent. However, the city in the sky was brightly lit with music, forming a sharp contrast with the imperial city below. Countless people were enjoying themselves. That was the normal state of the Sky Castle. Even though Hao Tianwang had issued an order to guard against the enemy, the Sky Castle was still the same. With two loud booms, Sky City shook violently. All the people who were still enjoying themselves screamed in horror. The shaking did not last for too long. When it finally calmed down, everyone was shocked and furious. The city in the sky had always been calm and tranquil. There was not even a trace of shaking, so how could it be like the mountains were shaking and the earth was quaking? Something must have happened. Many people ran out of their houses and looked at each other in confusion. None of them knew what was going on. In the most magnificent palace in the center of the city in the sky, Hao Tianwang and King Wuling were talking when they suddenly shook violently, shocking both father and son. The older, the wiser. Heavenly King Hao immediately reacted and shouted, "The enemy is here." Whoosh! He had already turned into a gust of wind and flew out of the palace. King Wuling's reaction was not slow either, and he quickly chased after him. Soaring into the air, the two of them had a panoramic view of the city in the sky. Creak, creak. A burst of ear-piercing and strange sounds suddenly rang out. Hao Tianwang's ears twitched and he said sternly, "Damn it, I didn't go to find them, but they came to die first." Ever since the failure of the Suicide Valley, Hao Tianwang had suffered a big blow. He was full of confidence in an operation, but in the end, it ended in failure. He could not accept this reality no matter what. He thought hard, and in the past few days, he had finally found a flaw. He gradually realized that he had misjudged the situation. Although Xiao Bai had inherited the 72 transformations, his strength was probably not as powerful as he had imagined. The 72 transformations were so powerful that it would definitely take time to comprehend them safely. How could it be completely comprehended in such a short time? At that time, Hao Tianwang was intimidated by Xiao Bai's aura, so he did not think of this in time. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. When he thought about how he had been played by Xiao Bai, his anger erupted like a volcano, and he could not restrain his anger. He was preparing to make a comeback and completely annihilate this group of enemies, but he did not expect the other party to be so daring as to restrain him first. "You don't know how to live. This time, I'll let you leave behind as many lives as you want." Hao Tianwang was full of confidence, but when he heard the creaking sounds that were getting more and more frequent, his expression suddenly changed, his eyelids twitched, and he realized something. "They destroyed the pillar of light," Hao Tianwang said, hitting the nail on the head. King Wuling's eyes widened in disbelief, and he cried out in alarm, "The pillar of light is protected by an array formation, how could it be destroyed?" Hao Tianwang did not answer, but this was the truth, and he could not refute it. Both father and son realized how fierce the other party was. They had actually destroyed the pillar of light without anyone noticing, which was destroying the foundation of Sky City. "Father, what do we do now?" King Wuling anxiously asked. "I'll go meet them and see who it is this time, so daring and unafraid of death," Hao Tianwang said without hesitation. Hao Tianwang was very clear about his son's cultivation compared to the enemy. Although he surpassed most of them, there was still a gap between him and Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai. If he rushed down rashly, what if he fell into the enemy's trap? He did not want anything to happen to his son. In addition, we must stabilize Sky City. Sky City has stood for tens of thousands of years and cannot be destroyed in our hands. Once Sky City breaks away from the Imperial City, it will be a serious blow to our dignity," Hao Tianwang exhorted. Hao Tianwang's eyes were like torches, and he saw the key point at a glance. After such a reminder, King Wuling also came to a realization. He gritted his teeth and said, "The enemy's intentions are really sinister. Let the Kuan Peng out and let it stabilize Sky City. At this time, we can only rely on its power to do this." Hao Tianwang dropped these words, and with a whoosh, he disappeared in front of King Wuling and swooped down towards the Imperial City. Along the way, he clearly saw the spiderweb-like cracks on the pillar of light, and his expression became colder and more gloomy. He knew that the pillar of light was in imminent danger, but he had no choice but to rely on the Kuan Peng's divine power. His goal was to find the enemy and then destroy them. His eyes were like lightning, looking down from above, looking for suspicious people in the Imperial City. Chapter 1695. Pairs of eyes were focused on the light pillar, watching the crumbling Sky City. Screams sounded one after another, and most people did not understand what was going on. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai hid in the dark and watched all this silently. Their eyes were fixed on Hao Tianwang, who was diving down rapidly in mid-air. The two of them were not in a hurry to rush out. Instead, they completely restrained their aura and deliberately hid. Their goal was Kuan Peng, not to get into a fierce battle with Hao Tianwang. Moreover, this was Hao Tianwang's territory, and it was easy to be surrounded. Although they were bold, they did not dare to take this risk. Hao Tianwang glanced around and did not find a suspicious target, so he could not help but be very angry. He could conclude that the target was in the Imperial City, but it was hidden so deep that even he could not detect it. Looking at the panicked crowd running around the streets of the imperial city, Hao Tianwang's anger erupted like a volcano. "Come out!" he roared and slapped the ground with both hands. A biting cold wind spurted out from his palms, blowing a tornado and sweeping the imperial city below. Crash! A large number of buildings were swept up by the tornado and shattered. Many people found it difficult to escape from this tornado. They screamed as they flew into the air, and then fell down heavily. Bang! 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 People seemed to be falling from the sky. Although these people were all cultivators and had cultivation, after experiencing this tornado, their cultivation was destroyed and they did not have the strength to resist falling from the sky. After a while, there were many corpses on the messy ground. Suddenly, the people in the imperial city were horrified. Although the people who lived in the imperial city were of high status, those who really had no status were not even qualified to live in the imperial city and could only live in places far away from the imperial city. Hao Tianwang did not put these people with status in his eyes. If it were other people, he would not put them in his eyes. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai did not suffer, but the two of them were stunned. They did not expect Hao Tianwang to be so cruel that he did not even spare his own people. Although the two of them had hidden themselves well, if they allowed Hao Tianwang to continue running amok, they would eventually be exposed. If they were ordinary citizens, Xiao Bai, as a member of the imperial family, would definitely not let innocent people get involved. However, since these people lived in the center of the imperial city and were sincerely loyal to Hao Tianwang, then he could not save them. If Hao Tianwang does this, he will definitely lose a lot of people's support. The heavens are really helping me, Tang Zheng thought to himself. When Hao Tianwang saw that it didn't work, he became even angrier. He flipped his palm and slammed it in another direction. As the palm fell, an ice palm rapidly condensed and grew in midair. Not long after, the ice palm turned into a giant palm. Boom! After a loud bang, the ice palm slammed into the ground. As for the buildings on the ground, they were completely smashed into powder. As for the people, they completely disappeared along with the buildings. How could the others not understand the situation? If they stayed around the light pillar, they would definitely lose their lives. Not only the residents, but even the city guards fled out of the city desperately, only to get farther and farther away from the light pillar. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai watched in horror. Hao Tianwang's cruel means were rarely seen in their lives. If you want to destroy it, you must first make it crazy. Hao Tianwang is really crazy. Tang Zheng sighed secretly. Xiao Bai exchanged glances with him, as if to say that they were about to be attacked. Tang Zheng signaled him to stay calm and continued to look up at the sky city. Crack! With a loud crack, the light pillar broke inch by inch and fell from the sky. However, before it fell to the ground, it turned into rays of light and dissipated. The light pillar was destroyed. Not only was Tang Zheng and Little White unable to take their eyes off this scene, all the other people in the imperial city were dumbstruck as well. They never thought that they would see this scene in their lives. The light pillar was destroyed. What about the sky city? Wasn't Hao Tianwang invincible? How could this happen right under his nose? Many people had doubts in their hearts. Hao Tianwang's high-handed policies had been implemented over the years, and no one dared to resist because they were afraid of Hao Tianwang and King Wuling. It seemed that they were not invincible. Such a big thing happened right under his nose, but Heavenly King Hao could do nothing about it. He could only vent his anger on them. Everyone was angry but did not dare to say anything. Even many people who were in awe of Hao Tianwang and King Wuling gradually lost their respect. The pillar of light disappeared, and Sky City was like a hydrogen balloon, rising slowly, as if it was going to soar into the sky above the 9 heavens. Wow! There were exclamations in the imperial city. Hao Tianwang also turned his head to look at the Sky City in the distance, and his face was extremely gloomy. What was King Wuling doing? How could he sit and watch all of this happen? But at this critical moment, he could only choose to believe in his son. So, he turned his head again, aimed at the imperial city, and said, "Go to hell." He slammed his palms down. This time, there were no ice palms, but a cold wind blew. Wherever it passed, the ice and snow, buildings, and people turned into ice, and with a bang, they all shattered. There was no exception. That terrifying chill made people feel as if their souls were about to fly away. Seeing that the cold air was getting closer and closer, Xiaobai looked anxiously at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng stared at the Sky City, indifferent. Xiaobai had no choice but to wait quietly, but he was also ready. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. Although it was night and he was far away, he still saw some clues. A huge figure appeared out of nowhere, holding up the Sky City. Yes, although the Sky City was incomparably huge, this figure was even bigger. It was like a boundless black cloud, covering the sky above the Imperial City, blocking the stars in the sky above the 9 heavens. The Sky City stopped flying high in the sky. "Master, be careful." Xiaobai stood in front of Tang Zheng and shouted in a low voice. The cold air was already in front of them. Found the Kuan Peng. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. As they expected, the Kuan Peng really appeared, but they didn't expect it to appear in such a situation. Xiaobai didn't care about the Kuan Peng, and used the bloodthirsty scepter to draw a circle around them. With a bang, a raging fire rose from the ground, surrounded the two of them, and blocked the terrifying cold air. In mid-air, Hao Tianwang's pupils shrank, and the raging fire in his eyes finally found a place to vent. He roared, "I finally found you, die." Whoosh! A cold palm slapped towards the two of them. Before the cold palm arrived, the circle of flames had already been extinguished by the cold air. Tang Zheng didn't pay attention to Hao Tianwang's attack at all. Instead, he stared at the Kuan Peng in the sky without blinking. He tiptoed and soared into the sky, flying directly towards the Kuan Peng. Xiaobai's speed wasn't inferior either. With the bloodthirsty scepter in his hand, he attacked Hao Tianwang. Countless streaks of blood shot out from the scepter, directly towards Hao Tianwang. Chapter 1696. Xiaobai blocked Hao Tianwang, and Tang Zheng flew straight to the Sky City, heading straight for the target. That huge body had already occupied half of the sky, and Tang Zheng also saw the Kuan Peng's intention clearly. It turned out to be carrying the Sky City. When its body came into contact with the Sky City, it was as if there was an invisible attractive force, firmly attracting each other. The Sky City no longer flew high into the sky. Many people in the Sky City were frightened. Although these people were all cultivators, they were not powerless. However, they had been enjoying themselves for too long and had no willpower to fight at all. Once they encountered a change, they panicked and were out of their wits. King Wuling looked at this group of people, his eyes spitting fire, and he wanted to kill them directly. However, these were his people, and they were also the influential class of the heavens beyond heaven. How could he kill them just because he wanted to? He stood in the air and roared, "Don't panic. Everyone, listen to me, the enemy is attacking. Everyone, cheer up and catch the enemy." King Wuling's appearance stabilized the hearts of the people, and the screams gradually weakened. Pairs of eyes firmly locked onto King Wuling. King Wuling knew that he had to take the lead to let this group of people who were content to enjoy themselves do something serious. He was about to act when suddenly, he heard the sound of fierce fighting coming from below. He felt a chill in his heart, knowing that the enemy had appeared. He looked around and suddenly realized that the Sky City was the foundation, and he could not panic. Naturally, his father Hao Tianwang would take care of the Imperial City, so he did not need to worry. Thus, he said loudly, "Everyone, listen to me, take your positions, and guard your posts and homes. Anyone who invades, kill without mercy, kill without mercy." A deafening roar echoed in the Sky City. However, this was not the influential class, but the Imperial Guards who guarded the Sky City. They were King Wuling's trusted subordinates. Ever since Hao Tianwang had faked his death, King Wuling had spent a huge sum of money to reorganize the Imperial Guards. This was the core of his power. The Imperial Guards were all elites chosen from the Outland. They had undergone extremely hard training and were absolutely loyal to King Wuling. Their loyalty was even greater than that of Hao Tianwang. If they had to choose between King Wuling and Hao Tianwang, they would choose King Wuling without hesitation. The momentum of the Imperial Guards was so great that the other nobles gradually calmed down. They all showed off and shouted, as if they were going to catch the enemy. It was as if it was as simple as going to the imperial city or hunting outside. This was completely different from when they were scared to the point where their legs turned to jelly. King Wuling did not stop them, and allowed them to rush to the edge of Sky City eagerly, as if they could immediately start a massacre. However, they did not wait for the attack that they expected. Only the sound of fierce battle came from the imperial city. King Wuling was puzzled. There seemed to be something fishy, but he could not figure it out at the moment. He did not know that below Sky City, after the Kuan-Peng carried Sky City, Tang Zheng also flew to the front of the Kuan-Peng. The Kuan-Peng could not take the initiative to attack and could only passively counterattack. Tang Zheng did not want to attack the Kuan-Peng. He stopped in the air in front of the Kuan-Peng and carefully observed it. However, the Kuan-Peng was like a huge balloon. He could not see its eyes at all. Naturally, there was no way to communicate with it. However, this could not go on. He had to find a way to take the Kuan-Peng away. Tang Zheng had an idea. The Kuan-Peng was very mysterious. Although it could not speak, it definitely had its own consciousness. Therefore, he tried to communicate with it through divine sense. Perhaps there would be an unexpected surprise. He believed that the Kuan-Peng could communicate. Otherwise, how could Hao Tianwang and King Wuling order it to move? If you can communicate, then I can too. Tang Zheng was very confident. He extended his divine sense and tried to communicate with the Kuan-Peng. However, when the divine sense reached the surface of the Kuan-Peng's body, a rebounding force bounced the divine sense back. Then, wouldn't there be no way to communicate? If the divine sense could not communicate, then he could only snatch it by force. Tang Zheng's expression turned cold. He stretched out his hand and placed it on the Kuan-Peng's body. He tried to use Sumeru World to keep the Kuan-Peng. Although the Kuan-Peng was huge, Sumeru World was not small either. Naturally, it could be contained. Even if the Kuan-Peng was unwilling, it was not up to it. He would take it away first and then communicate with it slowly. When his hand was placed on the Kuan-Peng's body, his brain rumbled as if a huge amount of energy rushed in. A voice suddenly sounded in his mind. "What are you doing?" Tang Zheng was shocked. A voice actually appeared in his mind. Moreover, he had no way to resist all of this. Everything happened too quickly, but Tang Zheng calmed down quickly and asked, "Who are you?" "I am the Kuan-Peng." "Kuan-Peng?" Tang Zheng was shocked. He was suffering from not being able to communicate with the Kuan-Peng. He did not expect to communicate like this. He looked at his hand that was placed on the Kuan-Peng's body and suddenly realized that it required physical contact to communicate with the divine sense. "Kuan-Peng, quickly shrink and leave this place with me." Tang Zheng went straight to the point. "Who are you? Why should I go with you?" The Kuan-Peng asked. "Kuan-Peng, you are the foundation of Sky Beyond Sky. You have a great connection with the royal family. Hao Tianwang and King Wuling are both enemies of the royal family. They are sinners of Sky Beyond Sky. How can you be with them?" Tang Zheng said straightforwardly. "Royal family? I seem to have heard of it somewhere. It feels so familiar." The Kuan-Peng said doubtfully. Tang Zheng moved and asked, "Don't you remember the royal family?" "I don't remember. I don't know why, but I lost a part of my memory. Could it be that tens of thousands of years ago, the internal strife between Hao Tianwang and the royal family caused the Kuan-Peng to be damaged and then it lost its memory?" Tang Zheng felt that this was very possible. This could explain why the Kuan-Peng had been following the royal family and then followed Hao Tianwang. Others thought that the Kuan-Peng had betrayed the royal family. In fact, it had lost its memory and did not know its mission. It did not know its relationship with the royal family. This gave Hao Tianwang an opportunity. Later, the righteous faction and the demon clan came to Sky Beyond Sky. Hao Tianwang used them to repair the damaged foundation of Sky Beyond Sky. The Kuan-Peng was related to Sky Beyond Sky and was naturally a beneficiary. When Sky Beyond Sky was stabilized, the Kuan-Peng recovered and then became a member of King Wuling's camp. If the Kuan-Peng regained its memory, it would definitely break with Hao Tianwang. It would be easy to take it away. However, the reality was that the Kuan-Peng had lost its memory. It was not easy to find its memory. Moreover, At this critical moment, there was no time to do all this. Thus, Tang Zheng made a prompt decision and said, "Kuan Peng, do you want to find your lost memory? Then come with me. I will help you find your memory." The Kuan Peng could not be defeated by force. He could only use his wits. The Kuan Peng was not stupid. It refused directly and said, "No, I still have to help them carry Sky City." Chapter 1697. After hearing Kuan Peng's words, Tang Zheng rolled his eyes. How could Kuan Peng be so stubborn? It actually still cared about helping Hao Tianwang. He destroyed the light pillar with great difficulty in order to attack Hao Tianwang's dignity and arrogance. If Kuan Peng kept carrying Sky City, wouldn't he have failed? Tang Zheng naturally couldn't watch this scene. His heart moved and he persuaded, "Kuan Peng, don't you want to regain your lost memories?" Kuan Peng replied stubbornly, "I will go with you in the future to regain my memories." Damn it, what did Hao Tianwang and the others do to Kuan Peng? It's like brainwashing. It's actually so loyal to them. Tang Zheng cursed in his heart. He knew that a long night was fraught with problems, especially when the battle below was very fierce. If he didn't seize the time and Xiaobai couldn't hold Hao Tianwang, he and Xiaobai would be in danger. Tang Zheng hesitated and said, "Then I'm sorry." Sumeru's world flashed and a mysterious force tried to wrap around Kuan Peng. However, he failed because Kuan Peng also burst out a burst of energy and completely bounced off the attractive force, giving him a taste of his own medicine. This was not a joke. Kuan Peng actually offset the attractive force and made Sumeru's world ineffective. Tang Zheng was shocked. In this way, there was no way to take Kuan Peng away. After all, this huge monster was too big of a target and it was impossible to take it away under the eyes of the enemy. Kuan Peng was stimulated by the attractive force of Sumeru's world and said angrily, "What are you doing? Where are you going to take me?" Tang Zheng was afraid that it would misunderstand and hurriedly explained, "I want to take you to regain your memories." Kuan Peng said angrily, "I have already told you that I have to carry Sky City first before I can regain my memories." Tang Zheng wanted to continue persuading, but he heard an angry shout from above. King Wuling led the Imperial Guards and rushed over to kill. It turned out that King Wuling realized that something was amiss when he heard that there was no movement for a long time and that no enemy was attacking Sky City. Therefore, he led a group of Imperial Guards to investigate and happened to see Tang Zheng. Especially when he saw Tang Zheng's hand on the Kuan Peng and seemed to be communicating with it, he was shocked and immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. Last time in the Suicide Valley, Tang Zheng did not pay too much attention to the Kuan Peng, but this time, he did not rush to the Sky City, but instead communicated with the Kuan Peng using his divine sense. Others might not understand what this meant, but for King Wuling, it was as if a bolt of lightning flashed through his mind, and he immediately reacted. Did the enemy come for the Kuan Peng? After all, the Kuan Peng was the foundation of heavens beyond. In the vast outer sky, only Hao Tianwang and King Wuling knew the true importance of the Kuan Peng. The others only thought of it as a huge transportation tool. Did the enemy also know the importance of the Kuan Peng? Martial Spirit King was shocked by this thought that popped up in his mind. How could the enemy know such a confidential matter? It could not have been leaked by the father and son. King Wuling did not understand, but he knew that he had to stop Tang Zheng from communicating with the Kuan Peng. If the Kuan Peng leaked any secrets, it would be terrible. Stop him. Under the Martial Spirit King's order, the Imperial Guards charged towards Tang Zheng without any regard for their own safety. Tang Zheng glanced at them and remained indifferent. Sumeru world flashed and two figures flew out. Tang Zheng shouted, "Stop them." The four symbols and Azura faced the Imperial Guards. Tang Zheng had to race against time to communicate with the Kuan Peng, so he could only let the others block the enemy first. The four symbols and the Azura were waiting for Tang Zheng's order, and they would charge into the large group of enemies without a care for their own safety. The Imperial Guards were numerous, numbering more than 100. They immediately surrounded the four symbols and Azura, but the two were not afraid at all. Instead, they looked at each other, as if they were secretly competing with each other. Kill. The Shura roared. Strands of yin qi began to spread out from his body like smoke. The Imperial Guards did not know how powerful the yin qi was. They only knew that there was a chill in their bones. They did not take it seriously at all. However, in the next second, they felt the yin qi enter their 8 extraordinary meridians and destroy their bodies. At a speed visible to the naked eye, their bodies started to rot. The screams pierced through the night sky. Only then did the companions realize that something was wrong. They scattered in all directions, but there was nothing they could do. They could only watch as their companions turned into a pool of thick water and fell from the sky. "Don't let that damn thing come close." Someone pointed at it and screamed. "Let's go together and kill them." King Wuling's pupils shrank. He had to turn the situation around as soon as possible. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Imperial Guards did not dare to come close. They could only activate their treasures and attack the 4 symbols and Azura from afar. The 4 symbols was not afraid at all. They flew straight ahead. All kinds of treasures hit him, but only muffled sounds could be heard. They could not hurt him. He walked in front of an Imperial Guard. He reached out and grabbed. His palm grew in the wind, and quickly turned into a giant palm. With a clench of his 5 fingers, a few Imperial Guards were caught in his palm. Pa, 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 the sound of bones breaking rang out continuously. The Imperial Guards were turned into minced meat. Seeing that the Imperial Guards were avoiding the yin qi, Azura raised his Azura saber. The blade grew rapidly and turned into a giant saber, slashing down from the sky. Pu, pu, pu. A few Imperial Guards happened to be cut by the blade and were cut in half. They died on the spot. The attacks of the 4 symbols and Azura were very fierce. It was especially shocking. Although King Wuling was an elite of the realm beyond heaven, he had lived like a prince for many years and rarely saw such a tragic situation. He could not help but be shocked. King Wuling knew that this could not go on. So, he rushed out personally and shouted, "Die quickly." Hua! An ice sword appeared in his hand. It fell from the sky and slashed at the Azura saber. Fierce chi flew everywhere, splitting the sky. The surrounding Imperial Guards could not dodge in time. They were affected by the chi and died in large numbers. King Wuling became angrier as he watched. The Imperial Guards had just appeared, and so many of them had died. It was really embarrassing. Without waiting for the ice sword's attack to be exhausted, his second round of attacks came unexpectedly. It swept over like a violent storm. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the Azura and King Wuling fought fiercely. The Azura saber and the ice sword went back and forth, fighting very happily. On the other hand, the 4 symbols rampaged among the Imperial Guards. In a few moves, they scattered the Imperial Guards. In an instant, the scene became chaotic. The Imperial Guards were not a match for the 4 symbols at all. They were scattered everywhere. Moreover, the 4 symbols did not use his full strength. That was because he had to be careful of Tang Zheng. He did not want the enemy to disturb Tang Zheng when he and the Azura were unprepared. No matter how tragic the situation was, Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear to it. It was as if he was not involved. He was thinking of ways to persuade the Kuan Peng. However, the Kuan Peng was stubborn and did not move. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1698. The battle in mid-air had already attracted Hao Tianwang's attention. He was furious. The enemy was actually coming for the Kuan Peng, which was far beyond his expectations. The enemy was putting himself in danger and had such a clear goal. He must have a great plan. In particular, the Kuan Peng was the foundation of the realm beyond heaven. It had unpredictable magical powers. If the enemy was using the Kuan Peng to do something unfavorable to him, it would be bad news for him. No matter what, he could not let this happen. Therefore, Hao Tianwang's killing intent towards Xiao Bai became even stronger. He said with a murderous look, "No matter what your plan is, I want to tell you that it is useless. I will not let you succeed." Xiao Bai looked up at Tang Zheng's situation and was extremely anxious. He also understood that the situation had reached the worst point. Although they had found the Kuan Peng, they were surrounded. In this way, it would be even more difficult for them to take the Kuan Peng away. However, It was obvious that Tang Zheng did not give up hope. Naturally, Xiao Bai would not give up hope either. Xiao Bai was not afraid of Hao Tianwang's threat at all. He retorted, "This is not up to you." Whoosh! A bloody light shot out from the bloodthirsty scepter, but it was immediately blocked by a thick ice wall. Whoosh! An ice sword pierced out from the ice wall and arrived in front of Xiao Bai in the blink of an eye. Xiao Bai hurriedly waved the bloodthirsty scepter. Boom! The two magic treasures collided. Two rays of light, one white and one red, gradually dyed the dark night sky and illuminated the surrounding ruins. "You have made great progress. If I let you live, I'm afraid that one day in the future you will ruin my plans. Therefore, you must die," Hao Tianwang roared. Xiao Bai had changed a lot after meeting him twice. Hao Tianwang became very wary of him. As soon as his voice fell, Xiao Bai felt the air around him turn cold. With a rumbling sound, flames rose from his body and quickly spread in all directions. However, these flames could not completely disperse the ice. The ice seemed to be endless. When he melted a part of it, it quickly condensed back into ice. "Kill!" Xiao Bai let out a furious roar. Countless strands of blood shot out from the bloodthirsty scepter and flew towards Hao Tianwang. All of a sudden, tiny ice swords appeared in front of him without any warning, and attacked the incoming bloodlines fiercely. The blood threads were completely severed. The huge ice sword pierced straight through, forcing the bloodthirsty scepter to retreat. In the end, Xiao Bai's cultivation was inferior to Hao Tianwang's. It was already a miracle that he could last this long. In the end, he was still no match for Hao Tianwang's attacks. Hao Tianwang sneered, "You can't hold on anymore. Your royal family is indeed weak. I am the ruler of this sky beyond heaven." The ice sword suddenly emitted a dazzling light, and a fierce aura swept across the sky. Boom! The ice sword suddenly grew larger, almost occupying half of the sky. The monstrous sword intent completely enveloped the bloodthirsty scepter and Xiao Bai. Puff! Xiao Bai spat out a mouthful of blood. It was as if half of his strength had been sucked away. Like a cannonball, he flew backwards and rushed towards Sky City. Hao Tianwang took advantage of the situation and chased after him, stepping into the air. Tang Zheng saw Xiao Bai's miserable state from afar. He sighed in his heart. After all, they were not as strong as Hao Tianwang. This was an insurmountable gap. What should I do? The Kuan Peng was stubborn and refused to leave. Should I just give up? If I miss this chance, I'm afraid I won't even be able to see the Kuan Peng again, let alone communicate with it. Just as he was hesitating, Xiao Bai had already flown in front of him. Hao Tianwang followed closely behind, directly rushing towards Tang Zheng. When enemies meet, their eyes would turn red. Hao Tianwang had a deep impression of Tang Zheng. Immediately, a murderous aura swept across the sky. He roared, "Tang Zheng, let's see how you can escape." Whoosh! The ice sword fiercely pierced over. The hidden mystic sword appeared out of nowhere and fiercely slashed out, facing Hao Tianwang's ice sword. Dang! 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 The two magic treasures kept hitting each other in the air. The sword chi was like a rainbow. Within dozens of meters, no one dared to get close, fearing that they would be caught in the crossfire. Tang Zheng's cultivation was not as good as Hao Tianwang's. He was also multitasking. How could he win? After a while, there was a crisis. The hidden mystic sword could only block tiredly and could not take the initiative to attack. Xiao Bai stopped in front of Tang Zheng and anxiously asked, "Master, how is it?" Tang Zheng disappointedly said, "As long as I touch the Kuan Peng's body, I can communicate with it. But the Kuan Peng has lost its memory. It doesn't remember the royal family. I persuaded it to leave with me and find its memory, but it didn't listen." Xiao Bai angrily said, "If it doesn't listen, then take it away." Tang Zheng bitterly smiled. It was easy to say, but how could it be so easy to do? Xiao Bai also realized that his words were not reliable. He resentfully said, "Then let me wake it up by scolding it. It actually forgot the royal family. Doesn't it know that it has been with the royal family for tens of thousands of years?" After saying this, he put his hand on the Kuan Peng. Xiao Bai was injured and stained with his own blood. After he put his hand on the Kuan Peng, a bloodlight immediately lit up. At the same time, the Kuan Peng's body also lit up. Huh! Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide in surprise. He had tried so hard to persuade the Kuan Peng for so long. Why didn't the Kuan Peng react? Xiao Bai just put his hand on the Kuan Peng's body and it reacted. Tang Zheng stared at the ball of bloody light, deep in thought. Could it be because of the blood? No. Tang Zheng immediately denied it. It was definitely not someone's blood. It had to be the blood of the royal family. Then the Kuan Peng would react. The Kuan Peng and the royal family had been together for tens of thousands of years. There was probably a mysterious connection between the two. This was probably something that even Hao Tianwang and Xiao Bai did not know. This time, it was completely triggered by chance. If he had known this earlier, he would have asked Xiao Bai to persuade the Kuan Peng and he would have stopped Hao Tianwang. Then, he would not have wasted so much time. Tang Zheng had no time to regret. He hurriedly reminded, Xiao Bai, the Kuan Peng is reacting. Hurry up and communicate with it. Without Tang Zheng's reminder, Xiao Bai had already reacted. That was because the Kuan Peng's voice also sounded in his mind. Who are you? I am your grandpa, Xiao Bai answered angrily. However, the Kuan Peng's reaction was out of his expectation. The Kuan Peng became silent. Then, the light on the Kuan Peng's body started to spread rapidly in all directions with Xiao Bai's hand as the origin. It was extremely fast. It seemed that the light was going to cover the Kuan Peng completely. Xiao Bai also forgot to speak. He had realized something and looked at all this in a daze. Tang Zheng also looked up at the Kuan Peng. He did not know what the spreading light meant. However, he was looking forward to it. In the distance, Hao Tianwang was stunned when he saw this. He had studied the Kuan Peng for many years. He had not gained much and such a situation had never happened before. He did not know what it meant. However, he was sure of one thing. This was definitely not a situation that he wanted to see. Chapter 1699. Stop! Hao Tianwang roared. With a swoosh, the ice sword split into two, and then into tens of thousands, covering the sky and earth. With a terrifying sound of breaking through the air, they attacked Xiao Bai at the same time. Xiao Bai, don't worry about communicating. I'll block him for you. Tang Zheng gave up on communicating. His figure flashed and turned into a ray of light, facing Hao Tianwang. Whoosh! A black hole appeared in front of him, and the sky-swallowing technique expanded to its maximum power, sky-swallowing. The black hole expanded rapidly as if it was really going to expand to the same size as the sky. Those ice swords had no way to pass through the black hole and were completely sucked in. These ice swords were not the real bodies of magic treasures, but illusions. However, they were not any weaker than ordinary magic treasures. It was a pity that they encountered the sky-swallowing technique. Now that they were in the imperial city, Hao Tianwang's territory, Tang Zheng was not afraid of hurting the innocent, so he dared to use the sky-swallowing technique so unscrupulously. This was Tang Zheng truly using the sky-swallowing realm to his heart's content. The power was as he had expected, abnormally terrifying. Hao Tianwang's mind actually trembled as if it was going to be sucked into the black hole. He reached out his hand, and an ice sword struggled to escape the suction of the black hole and flew back to his hand. He and the ice sword became one, occupying half of the sky. The sky was completely frozen, becoming a part of the ice sword. Hao Tianwang merged into it, and his body could not be seen at all. However, his voice rumbled like thunder. You can die proud. Ever since I mastered the divine technique, no one has been able to force me to use the man and sword as one. Tang Zheng sneered, and said, Die? Then you'll have to break my sky-swallowing technique first. Sky-swallowing technique? You really think you can swallow the sky? Hao Tianwang disagreed. The sky is full of me. I'll see how you swallow me. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? After a slight pause, Hao Tianwang finished preparing and roared, Kill! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sky full of ice swords flew towards the black hole. This was clearly more powerful than the previous ice swords. Unfortunately, The black hole took them all in without giving the ice swords a chance to escape. Not long after, all the ice swords that flew over disappeared. In the heaven realm, these ice swords turned into waves of energy. They were not weak at all. They silently merged into the tree of life. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Hao Tianwang's attack was indeed extraordinary. The energy contained within it was enormous, and it had actually benefited him. However, Tang Zheng was not happy for too long. His heart suddenly sank, and he found some clues. Hao Tianwang's attacks were endless, as if there was no end to them, one round after another. As the saying goes, dripping water can penetrate a stone. With so many attacks coming one after another, as time passed, it was actually effective. The edge of the black hole trembled slightly. How could Tang Zheng not understand what was going on? His heartstrings trembled, and his face turned pale. Hao Tianwang's attack is actually so powerful that even the sky-devouring technique can't block it. Although he had completely comprehended the sky-devouring technique and reached the sky-devouring realm, there was a huge gap between his cultivation and Hao Tianwang's. The sky-devouring technique could restrain Hao Tianwang, but it might not be able to completely restrain him. This was because Hao Tianwang's continuous attacks were also a huge threat to the sky-devouring technique. This was how it worked. There was nothing in the world that could absolutely overwhelm everything. It was either the east wind that overwhelmed the west wind, or the west wind that overwhelmed the east wind. Hao Tianwang could barely resist the sky-devouring technique, but it was not so easy for other people and things. A huge black hole hung high in the sky. Once a huge suction force enveloped someone, that person would be sucked into it with a whoosh, turning into energy to replenish the heaven realm. The ruins in the imperial city also flew up quickly, covering the sky and the earth. There were ruins everywhere, but the black hole took them all in without being picky at all. Rumble. Suddenly, a series of strange loud sounds came from the ground. What's going on? Many people's hearts were thumping. They did not know what was going on, but the next scene made them tremble. The ground actually rose high, and pieces of soil and rocks flew up. Not long after, a huge pit appeared in the imperial city. All the soil and rocks were sucked into the black hole. Only then did everyone understand the terror of the sky-devouring technique. This black hole could devour everything. Not only people, but even the earth could be devoured. It seemed that the sky-devouring technique was not impossible. Hao Tianwang was also shocked by this scene. He had never seen such an evil divine ability. If the entire imperial city was swallowed into the black hole, it would definitely be a painful blow to him. He could not sit back and watch. Suddenly, he glanced from the corner of his eye, and his eyelids twitched. He was secretly delighted as if he had discovered a new world. He laughed out loud and said, "So your sky-devouring technique is not invincible." He found the traces of trembling at the edge of the black hole. This was not there before. It was obvious that his attack had worked. Hao Tianwang seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. He used all his attacks, and half the sky turned into a huge ice sword. Whoosh! The huge sword flew toward the black hole. This huge sword was much bigger than the black hole, and Hao Tianwang was attached to it. He was bound to destroy the black hole with this attack. The overwhelming terror actually hit him in the face, and Tang Zheng's heartstrings kept trembling. He found that the trembling at the edge of the black hole was getting more and more intense. No matter how he activated the sky-devouring technique, he could not make up for it. Hao Tianwang is really too powerful. Perhaps the sky-devouring technique can only be a real threat to him after my cultivation increases greatly. Tang Zheng understood. He turned his head and looked at Xiao Bai and the Kuan Peng. He found that the light had completely spread to the Kuan Peng's body. Xiao Bai and the Kuan Peng were motionless, as if they had lost consciousness. They were indifferent to the earth-shattering battle outside. They must have reached a critical moment. I have to hold on until the last moment. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and did not retreat. He activated all his power and kept using the sky-devouring technique, pushing the power of the sky-devouring technique to the extreme. Boom! The huge sword pierced the black hole. The black hole trembled violently, but the huge sword was also shattered and sucked into the black hole. However, The huge sword was too big. It could not be shattered in a short period of time. Both sides were fighting a war of attrition to see who would be able to hold on until the end. The edge of the black hole trembled a few times, and a gap appeared. The suction of the black hole decreased sharply. Tang Zheng tried to use his power to make up for it, but he found that it was a drop in the bucket. He had consumed too much power. Although the sky-devouring technique was powerful, it consumed a lot of power. It was commendable that he could only hold on for so long. There were more and more gaps in the black hole, and the huge sword was getting smaller and smaller. Almost everyone else was attracted by this scene. They had already hidden outside the range of the black hole's suction. They did not dare to take the risk. Even King Wuling did not dare to be so careless. At the same time, thousands of pairs of eyes inside and outside the imperial city were also watching this scene. They had never seen anyone who dared to fight against Hao Tianwang, let alone be in a stalemate. Chapter 1700. More and more holes appeared in the black hole, and the aura became more and more chaotic. The giant sword continued to shatter, and the fragments were sucked into the black hole, becoming smaller and smaller. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out, and a blinding light flashed in the air. Everyone subconsciously closed their eyes. However, when they opened their eyes again, everything had changed. The black hole had disappeared, and the ice sword's light was weak. A crack ran through it, and although the ice sword was not destroyed, its vitality had been greatly damaged. Hao Tianwang appeared again, standing next to the ice sword. He looked up at the sky with his mouth wide open. Following his gaze, everyone's mind shook, and they were dumbstruck. The sky had collapsed. A corner of the sky had collapsed, and a huge hole had appeared. This scene frightened everyone, including Hao Tianwang and Tang Zheng. The two involved had never thought that the exhibition would turn out like this. How could the sky collapse? Hao Tianwang looked at Tang Zheng with fear and said through gritted teeth, "This is all because of you." Even if the other party was killed and a corner of the sky above the imperial city collapsed, this would still be a huge humiliation and scar. It would be a ghastly sight hanging here. Anyone who raised their head would be able to see it. This was truly a slap to his face. Tang Zheng had used up a lot of energy. If Hao Tianwang attacked again, then he would not have enough energy to use the sky-swallowing technique. The more this was the case, the more he did not dare to reveal his true situation. He deliberately provoked, "Hao Tianwang, this is just the beginning. My sky-swallowing technique is not just for show. It can really swallow the sky." Hao Tianwang did not believe it at first, but now he had no choice but to believe it. Facts spoke louder than words. Wasn't that corner of the sky right in front of him? What should he do? Hao Tianwang began to think. King Wuling and the Imperial Guard also stopped attacking, confronting the four symbols and Azura. King Wuling was not afraid of these two, but his Imperial Guard was not their match. This caused the two sides to be in a stalemate for a long time, and there was no clear victor. The scene of the sky collapsing caused both sides to fall into silence. They looked at each other, waiting for their own people to give the order so that they could attack again. However, after waiting for a long time, there was still no order to attack. Tang Zheng and Hao Tianwang looked at each other from a distance. Both of them wanted to kill the other, but neither of them acted rashly. Tang Zheng was deliberately stalling for time. The longer he delayed, the better. Hao Tianwang was afraid of the sky-swallowing technique. He did not know that Tang Zheng was temporarily unable to use the sky-swallowing technique. Otherwise, he would definitely attack Tang Zheng without hesitation. Suddenly, Tang Zheng heard some movement behind him. It turned out to be Xiao Bai. He was overjoyed and shouted, "Master, I did it. Success!" Tang Zheng shivered and immediately understood that Xiao Bai was talking about persuading Kuan Peng. For the time being, he had no energy and mind to care about how Xiao Bai did it. He could not wait to order, "Quickly take Kuan Peng away." "I won't go. I want to go with Master," Xiao Bai said stubbornly. "How can that be? Kuan Peng is the most important," Tang Zheng retorted. Xiao Bai was unmoved and insisted, "No one can be compared with Master. Master is more important than Kuan Peng." After saying that, Xiao Bai actually let go of his hand. He held the bloodthirsty scepter with both hands and pointed it at Hao Tianwang from afar. It was as if he was saying that he would rather die in battle than surrender. Hao Tianwang was shocked and his expression changed. This was because he understood the conversation between Xiao Bai and Tang Zheng. How could Xiao Bai persuade Kuan Peng? Wasn't Kuan Peng stubborn? What method did Xiao Bai use to make Kuan Peng change its mind? Hao Tianwang could not figure it out. However, he knew that if he did not act now, it would be too late. Hence, he roared, "Kill!" Monstrous killing intent surged out again and engulfed Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng could not block it at all. He could only watch as the ice sword flew towards him. Hao Tianwang was overjoyed. It turned out that Tang Zheng was bluffing and was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He had almost been frightened by him. "Don't even think about hurting my master." The four symbols and Azura roared loudly and rushed towards Tang Zheng without any regard for their own safety. They tried to block the sword for him. However, they were too far away and could not block the sword in time. Hao Tianwang's face revealed a sinister smile. It seemed that he was determined to win this sword. Whoosh! Suddenly, a ray of light covered Tang Zheng. The ice sword pierced the light, but the light did not waver. The ice sword suddenly changed direction and stabbed towards Hao Tianwang. Giving him a taste of his own medicine, Hao Tianwang cried out in alarm. The ice sword was fierce, but after all, it was his treasure. With a thought, the ice sword's attack disappeared. Looking closely, Xiao Bai was already in front of Tang Zheng to protect him. As for behind them, it was Kuan Peng. The attack just now was Kuan Peng's counterattack. It blocked Tang Zheng's attack. Kuan Peng had such a divine ability. Even Hao Tianwang's attack might not be able to hurt it. Especially now that Hao Tianwang had used up a lot of his power was greatly reduced. It was even more impossible for him to break through Kuan Peng's attack. Hao Tianwang was so angry that his whole body trembled. He pointed his sword at Kuan Peng and said, "Kuan Peng, do you know what you are doing?" Kuan Peng's voice rang out. However, it did not ring in their ears. Instead, it rang in everyone's mind. It actually did not need physical contact to be able to communicate with its divine sense. "Hao Tianwang, you have already recovered your memory. You have already remembered what you did in the past. Do you think that I will still stay by your side?" This sentence caused Hao Tianwang's mind to be greatly shocked. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief and said with a trembling voice, "How did you recover your memory?" "The blood of the royal family can recover my memory." "You didn't think of that, right?" "The blood of the royal family?" Hao Tianwang's pupils shrunk as he stared at Xiao Bai's palm. There was no blood on it. If he knew that the blood of the royal family had this kind of effect, Hao Tianwang would definitely not let Xiao Bai get close to Kuan Peng. Of course, if Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai knew about this, they would not have gone through such an intense battle and accidentally allowed Kuan Peng to recover its memory. Xiao Bai proudly raised his hand and said, "Hao Tianwang, you traitor. In the end, you will never understand the power of the royal family." Hao Tianwang coldly snorted and said, "What's so great about the royal family? Back then, weren't they all wiped out by me? Only you are a fish that escaped the net." Xiao Bai's eyes burned with anger and said, "You traitor still have the face to mention the past. You swore to be loyal to my father, but you went back on your words and betrayed him. A disloyal and unjust person like you will pay the price one day." "Ha ha ha. Price? What right do you have to say this? What can you do to me? I will first kill you, a fish that escaped the net. Then the royal family will completely disappear from the sky." Chapter 1701. Xiao Bai retorted in high spirits, "A spent force. Then you should break through the Kuan Peng's defense first before you talk big." After saying that, Xiao Bai protected Tang Zheng and retreated to the Kuan Peng's side. Tang Zheng looked at the Shura and the four symbols that were surrounded, and hurriedly shouted, "For symbols, Shura, come back." Hearing that, the four symbols and Shura quickly opened up a bloody path and flew towards them. Hao Tianwang said angrily, "Do you really think the Kuan Peng can stop me? It was hurt in the battle that year, which means its divine power is not omnipotent. Hao Tianwang raised his ice sword and rushed over aggressively. Kuan Peng, it's up to you. Xiao Bai raised his head and shouted. Hua! A ray of light rose from the Kuan Peng's body, protecting the two of them and the four symbols and Shura that were flying over. At this moment, Hao Tianwang had also arrived. The ice sword immediately slashed towards the few of them, but it hit the ray of light. Just like before, there was no earth-shattering momentum, and the ice sword flew backwards. Hao Tianwang hurriedly caught the ice sword, but was sent flying by the force of the ice sword flying backwards. Xiao Bai and Tang Zheng looked at each other and smiled. How can the Kuan Peng's divine power be broken through so easily? Let's see what other abilities Hao Tianwang has. Tang Zheng's head turned cold. The purpose of this trip was not to kill Hao Tianwang. Even with the Kuan Peng, they could not do this. Then there was no need to complicate matters. Taking the Kuan Peng away was the most important thing. Therefore, he whispered to Xiao Bai, quickly let the Kuan Peng leave with us. Leaving this place is the most important thing. Xiao Bai immediately accepted the order and said to the Kuan Peng with his divine sense, Kuan Peng, let's go. Xiao Bai and the Kuan Peng already had a mysterious divine sense communication, unlike outsiders who could only passively accept the Kuan Peng's communication. Whoosh! The Kuan Peng's body lit up. Then, the Kuan Peng moved. The Sky City also moved. It flew up from the Kuan Peng's back and flew towards the 9 heavens. Screams could be heard coming from Sky City. Since the Kuan Peng had removed its magical power, the city in the sky could no longer be fixed. Come, let's go to the back of the Kuan Peng. Xiao Bai shouted as the four of them flew onto the back of the Kuan Peng. They were enveloped by a layer of light, so they didn't have to worry about the enemy's attack. Hao Tianwang was enraged. He pointed his sword at the Kuan Peng and yelled, Stop them! Don't let any of them go! Attack! King Wuling understood and immediately ordered everyone to attack. Colorful magic weapons whizzed towards the Kuan Peng. However, when the magic weapon met the light on the back of the Kuan Peng, the attack disappeared. The magic weapon changed its direction and attacked its master. Some people were not strong enough and were not able to control their own magic treasures in time. They were even killed by their own magic treasures and died on the spot. Everyone was thrown off their feet. It was a mess. King Wuling shouted orders, but he couldn't stop this mess. He was unwilling to give up and attacked the Kuan Peng himself. The effect was the same. He couldn't break through the Kuan Peng's magical power. The Kuan Peng flew into the distance. Its huge body was shrinking bit by bit. However, it was still a huge monster. Hao Tianwang and King Wuling chased after it with their subordinates. They kept roaring and trying to make the Kuan Peng stop. Xiao Bai looked at this scene coldly and said, The Kuan Peng has been taken over by this traitor for so many years. Now, it has finally returned to its rightful owner. The Kuan Peng has regained its freedom. Tang Zheng said worriedly, The Kuan Peng is a big target. Although it can block their attacks, if they keep chasing, when will it end? Xiao Bai had an idea. He smiled mischievously and said, Master, I know what you're thinking. Then I'll make them unable to chase us. Tang Zheng looked at Xiao Bai curiously. He didn't know what he meant. Xiao Bai didn't explain much. He said to the Kuan Peng, it's up to you. Make the city in the sky crash. Yes. The Kuan Peng replied calmly. Hao Tianwang and the others chased after it with all their might. However, they couldn't hurt the other party. This made them very frustrated and helpless. Suddenly, the sky darkened. Everyone still didn't understand what was going on. They hurriedly looked up. Immediately, pairs of eyes opened wide. They looked at this scene in disbelief. Many people couldn't help but stop in their tracks. They stared at the sky in horror. Their eyes couldn't help but turn dark. Sky City was actually descending rapidly, heading straight for the crowd. Hao Tianwang and King Wuling were also stunned. The city in the sky had been floating in the air since ancient times. There had never been a situation where it fell. What was going on? They scratched their heads but couldn't figure out the reason. The cruel reality didn't allow them to continue thinking. They had to find a way to stop all this. What was the city in the sky? It was the symbol of his power and majesty. It was the result of his painstaking efforts for tens of thousands of years. How could he just let it fall? Hold the city in the sky. How Tianwang didn't decline. He flew into the sky and raised his hands forward. The air quickly dropped to the freezing point and condensed into pieces. Two huge palms appeared in the air and held the city in the sky. Tang Zheng was also stunned by this scene. He didn't understand and hurriedly asked, "Xiao Bai, what's going on?" Xiao Bai said mysteriously, "Master, all of this is the credit of the Kuan Peng." You definitely can't imagine that apart from the Kuan Peng's ability to give someone a taste of their own medicine, it also has another incredible ability. Tang Zheng was dumbfounded. He anxiously urged, "Don't be mysterious. Tell me what divine ability it is. When we first came to the sky beyond heaven, didn't you see many mountains floating in the air? Also, the city in the sky and those floating mountains are actually based on the same principle. They all have a mysterious connection with the Kuan Peng and are controlled by the Kuan Peng." Tang Zheng stared at the Kuan Peng's back and was speechless for a long time. This divine ability was indeed too heaven-defying. No wonder the city in the sky suddenly fell. The Kuan Peng has recovered its memory and this divine ability, so it can easily control the city in the sky. Xiao Bai added, although Hao Tianwang has imprisoned the Kuan Peng for countless years, he doesn't know this secret at all. Tang Zheng looked in the direction of the city in the sky and asked curiously, "Can Hao Tianwang hold the city in the sky?" Xiao Bai revealed a playful smile and said, "He can try and see how long he can last." Tang Zheng understood. No wonder Xiao Bai was so confident that he could get rid of the pursuers. With the city in the sky falling, how could Hao Tianwang have the mood to chase after them? Hao Tianwang really didn't have the mood to chase after them. Blue veins appeared on his forehead, and he gritted his teeth. His hands seemed to be crushed by the city in the sky. Cracks had already appeared on the giant ice palm in the air, as if it would collapse at any moment. "What are you waiting for? Come and help me," Hao Tianwang roared at King Wuling in annoyance. King Wuling seemed to wake up from a dream and also joined the team holding the city in the sky. Chapter 1702. Pairs of hands were holding up the Sky City, and it seemed that the Sky City was really being held up. However, when many people secretly felt lucky, everything changed again. Sky City slowly fell down again, and their arms felt like they were about to be crushed. Catcher. The huge palm condensed by Hao Tianwang was torn apart, turned into ice, and fell from the sky. Without the power of Hao Tianwang, how could the others hold up the Sky City? Whoosh! Almost instantly, the speed of the Sky City's fall increased greatly, and many people's arms were broken on the spot. Screams and exclamations sounded one after another. If this continued, these people would definitely be crushed into meat patties by the Sky City. Hao Tianwang gritted his teeth and shouted, "Retreat!" With an order, he took the lead and flew into the distance. The others did not dare to stay, and flew in all directions in a daze, not wanting to be crushed into meat patties by the Sky City. Without the power to lift, the Sky City was like a wild horse out of control, and like a meteorite falling from the sky, it fell to the ground with a whoosh. The people on the Sky City were shocked and screamed again, finally realizing that a great danger was coming. Even if they were cultivators, if they fell with the Sky City, the huge impact was enough to destroy their internal organs. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Figures flew up from the Sky City one by one, standing in the air, watching the Sky City fall with pale faces. The people in the Imperial City had long been frightened, and after coming to their senses, they fled in all directions. On the contrary, outside the Imperial City, the people at the lowest level watched this scene in high spirits. They never thought that they would be able to see such a scene in their lifetime. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the earth shook. The Sky City hit the ground like a meteorite. The earth seemed to have an earthquake, and dust was raised all over the sky. A huge pit appeared in the Imperial City, and even the places that were not hit quickly collapsed and fell apart. The Sky City was destroyed, and so was the Imperial City. Hao Tianwang's base camp, which he had operated for so many years, was destroyed. Hao Tianwang's dignity was destroyed along with this. Hao Tianwang stood in the air, his face alternating between red and white. It was extremely terrifying as he stared fixedly at this scene. His mood was extremely complicated. This was the most painful Waterloo of his life. After this battle, everything he had built up before collapsed with a loud bang. He wanted to kill. He looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. The air in all directions quickly condensed and soon turned into ice. Those who were too close to him were frozen and died on the spot. Everyone retreated in panic. Even King Wu Ling did not dare to get involved. He was afraid that it would be too late. No one dared to dissuade him. They were all trembling with fear. They were all fully aware of the fury in Hao Tianwang's heart. Someone stealthily looked in the direction where the Kuan Peng flew away. Unknowingly, the huge body of the Kuan Peng had disappeared. However, King Wuling knew very well that the Kuan Peng must have become smaller, so he couldn't find it at all. Perhaps they were hiding in some corner, watching this scene with Schadenfreude. Indeed, this was the case. Above the 9 heavens, in a huge cloud, the somersault cloud was hiding there. The few of them stood on the cloud and looked down at everything below. The Kuan Peng had changed greatly. It was like a bird, held in Xiao Bai's hand. Xiao Bai couldn't hide his surprise and said, "Master, this is not a destructive blow to this group of traitors, but it will definitely make them unable to recover in a short period of time." Tang Jing nodded in agreement. After this battle, Hao Tianwang's vitality will be greatly damaged. He won't have the energy to target us at all. We can also temporarily recuperate and gradually grow stronger. Xiao Bai rolled his eyes and said worriedly, "What if Hao Tianwang is too angry and leads his troops to attack us? What should we do?" Tang Jing chuckled and said, "If he really does that, then he must be out of his mind. This time, it's not as simple as destroying the Sky City and the Imperial City. It's a fatal blow to his dignity. If he attacks us without caring about anything, do you believe that his backyard will be on fire?" Xiao Bai's eyes lit up and he seemed to be deep in thought. Tang Zhang added, "In fact, Hao Tianwang's rule is not as firm as we thought. Perhaps because of his guilty conscience, he has been implementing high-pressure policies. The ordinary residents of Sky Beyond are living in an abyss of suffering. They only fear Hao Tianwang and don't dare to fight back. It's different now. This destructive blow will definitely spread throughout Sky Beyond. Those who have long been dissatisfied with Hao Tianwang will definitely take advantage of the situation. Many people will also know that the royal family has returned and is powerful. Perhaps many people will even seek refuge with you. Hao Tianwang must reorganize his backyard and rebuild his prestige. Only then will he have the time to deal with us." After listening to Tang Zheng's analysis, Xiao Bai was deep in thought. Finally, he came to a realization and exclaimed excitedly, "Master is really amazing. Your analysis is so thorough. This is really an unexpected surprise. I didn't expect that in order to find the Kuanping, he would give Hao Tianwang such a heavy blow." As he spoke, he looked down at the Kuanping and couldn't help but have a strong hope for it. "Let's go, no need to look. Let's go back to the barbarian land first." Tang Zheng rode the somersault cloud, mixed in with other clouds, and quietly left. Wherever they passed, many people stopped and looked in the direction of the Sky Palace City. The Sky City was suspended in mid-air. Even if it was far away, it could be seen clearly. Whenever someone had the thought of rebelling, they would look up at the Sky City in the distance and suppress this thought. They never expected that the Sky City would crash in front of everyone's eyes. This great news spread quickly and spread to even farther places in Sky Beyond. The thought of rebelling in people's hearts unconsciously ignited again. This time, it was no longer suppressed. Instead, it spread rapidly like a spark starting a prairie fire. The elites of Sky Beyond were basically concentrated in the Imperial City and Sky Beyond, but it didn't mean that there were no elite masters among the people. The saying that masters were among the people was not only applicable to the human world, but also to Sky Beyond. Many elite masters hid among the people, unwilling to work for Hao Tianwang. These elites began to contact each other, and the fire of revolution quietly burned. Tang Zheng witnessed all this, But he wasn't surprised. This was because, in the history of the human world, this scene had played out countless times. Xiao Bai was seeing this for the first time in his life. He couldn't help but wave his fists excitedly. This was Sky Beyond, his home, and it was quietly changing. Master, when I go back, I'll join forces with these people. There's strength in numbers. If we fight against Hao Tianwang together, our chances of winning will be higher. Xiao Bai said excitedly. You can do that, but you also have to be careful. The people are mixed in with the honest folk, and there are also many who have bad intentions. These people must be strictly guarded against and can't mix into our team. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles in the future. Tang Zheng gave Xiao Bai a dose of precaution. Xiao Bai didn't think so much. He nodded thoughtfully and said, "Thank you for your advice, Master. With Master in charge, the rascals won't be able to succeed." Tang Zheng shook his head and patted Xiao Bai's shoulder, saying, "Xiao Bai, this is your home. You are their emperor. You have to stand at the forefront." Ah. Chapter 1703. Xiao Bai came back to his senses and asked blankly, "Master, what do you mean? You fought for all of this, so of course you're the one standing at the front." Tang Zheng knew Xiao Bai's intentions and said patiently, "Xiao Bai, Sky Beyond Heaven is your home. These people trust you the most, do you understand? But I believe in you, Master." Xiao Bai said stubbornly. Tang Zheng shook his head and said, "Wait until Sky Beyond Heaven stabilizes, then I will leave. After that, everything will depend on you." Xiao Bai's expression darkened. He was not afraid of fighting alone, but was used to having Tang Zheng by his side. He said worriedly, "Master, without you, how can we defeat that traitor?" Tang Zheng encouraged him, "Xiao Bai, you have to believe in yourself. You are far stronger than you think. You will definitely defeat Hao Tianwang. You have to have confidence." Xiao Bai hung his head dejectedly. "Xiao Bai, pull yourself together. You are a descendant of the imperial family, the emperor of countless people in Sky Beyond Heaven. Do you understand? Do you want to disappoint me?" Tang Zheng's expression darkened as he sternly reprimanded him. Xiao Bai raised his head and bit his lips. Seeing Tang Zheng's encouraging expression, confidence slowly spread from the bottom of his heart. Finally, he nodded heavily and said, "Master, I will not disappoint you." Tang Zheng smiled with gratification. When the somersault cloud arrived at the wildlands, many people came forward to welcome it. They saw the familiar somersault cloud from afar. They were both expectant and worried, afraid that something bad would happen. Yi Dingdang, Wu, and Liu Qingmai stood at the front of the group. The three of them were the most worried about Tang Zheng. Although they knew that Tang Zheng's cultivation was strong, the enemy was also strong. Success or failure was completely unpredictable. In mid-air, Tang Zheng saw them. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and soared into the air. He descended from the sky and gently landed in front of the three people. The three of them excitedly rushed forward and hung onto Tang Zheng's body. "Ha ha ha," Tang Zheng laughed loudly and hugged the three of them tightly. He patted their backs and comforted them, "I'm an unkillable cockroach. Why are you so worried about me?" Yi Dingdang angrily punched him and said, "You're not worried at all. You made the three of us so worried that we couldn't sleep." "Yes, it's my fault. This time is too special. I'll definitely bring you guys along next time." Tang Zheng quickly surrendered. The three of them rolled their eyes at him and said, "That's more like it." After pausing for a moment, he hurriedly asked, "What's the outcome?" The somersault cloud landed on the savage lands. Xiao Bai, the four symbols, and the Shura all disembarked. They immediately attracted the attention of everyone. Not many people noticed that Xiao Bai was carrying the Kuan Peng. That was because it was too different from the image in everyone's mind. It was too easy to overlook. The Grandmaster hurriedly went to Xiao Bai's side and sized him up. He didn't find any injuries. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. "Grandmaster, don't worry. I'm fine." Xiao Bai smiled. Seeing that the four of them had returned safely, everyone was concerned about the success or failure of the mission. Yi Dingdang repeatedly asked, Tang Zheng didn't keep them in suspense. He pointed at the Kuan Peng and said, "Isn't this the result?" Swoosh. Immediately, all eyes focused on the Kuan Peng. Not knowing what was going on, Yi Dingdang asked doubtfully, "Is this Xiao Bai's new pet?" Pet. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai laughed at the same time. Tang Zheng pointed at the Kuan Peng and said, "Everyone, look carefully. What exactly is it?" The Grandmaster cried out in surprise, "Kuan Peng, ha ha ha, Grandmaster has sharp eyes." "You guessed right. It is the Kuan Peng." Xiao Bai couldn't hide his excitement as he said. Everyone was shocked. They had seen the Kuan Peng's huge body. It was completely different from this little thing. How could this be the Kuan Peng? But when they looked carefully, other than the size, it was very similar to the Kuan Peng. It really is the Kuan Peng. Everyone turned pale with fright as they gradually accepted this reality. How did the Kuan Peng become like this? Everyone had this question in their hearts. Tang Zheng signaled to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai understood and explained, "The Kuan Peng can change its size." The Grandmaster asked doubtfully, "But in my memory, the Kuan Peng can't change its size." That was in the past. After the Kuan Peng was damaged and was repaired by Hao Tianwang, it had the ability to change its size. Everyone suddenly understood. Tian Chanzi was more interested in the experience of this trip and quickly asked about it. Xiao Bai had already been instructed by Tang Zheng and slowly explained. Although his words were simple, it quickly attracted the attention of the crowd. Everyone was overwhelmed with emotions, and their hearts were undulating. How much courage and strength was required to take the risk alone but still obtain a complete victory? Everyone could understand without even thinking about it. Especially the leaders of the righteous faction. They didn't know the purpose of Tang Zheng's trip. Only then did they know that they were pulling the tooth from the tiger's mouth. They actually took the Kuan Peng from Hao Tianwang. How difficult was this? They were very clear about this since they were chased by Hao Tianwang's subordinates all these years. But this mission was still successful. They didn't know what words to use to describe it. They could only praise it in their hearts. A leader asked curiously, "What's so special about the Kuan Peng that you have to take the risk?" Xiao Bai explained, "The Kuan Peng is the foundation of the Outland. It's as important as the Tree of Life to the human world." At the mention of the Tree of Life, all the righteous faction suddenly understood. They might have heard of the legend of the Tree of Life. It was the key to the survival of a world. Suddenly, the eyes of the people looking at the Kuan Peng changed drastically. There was a trace of awe in their eyes. "What's the use of taking back the Kuan Peng?" someone asked. Xiao Bai turned to look at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng nodded at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai understood and patted the back of the Kuan Peng. He said, "Let's wait and see." On the way back, the two had already discussed the next action. Since these people asked, they might as well let everyone see and use this to completely intimidate them. The Kuan Peng had already been instructed. It rose into the air and flew towards the sky. At the same time, it rapidly changed. When it rose into the air, it had already turned into its real body. One couldn't see the end of it. It made people admire it. But many people didn't know what was going on. They looked at the Kuan Peng blankly. Only a few people had seen the Tree of Life turn the desert into an oasis. So their hearts were filled with anticipation. Many pairs of eyes were fixed on the Kuan Peng. A ray of light appeared on the Kuan Peng's body. This ray of light wasn't very strong, but it was full of vitality. The ray of light fell from the sky and turned into countless raindrops, sprinkling on the wilderness. Chapter 1704. The sky full of light fell on the hard rocks of the barbarian land. Everyone looked at all this blankly, not knowing what would happen. Suddenly, a green grew out of the barbarian land. A blade of grass. Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. It was not surprising that a blade of grass grew in other places, but this was the barbarian land. Everything in the barbarian land could not grow. This was a well-known fact. It was said that there was once a powerful master who tried to change all this. In the end, he exhausted all his power and failed. Since then, no one dared to overestimate themselves. The scene in front of them gave everyone a profound lesson. It turned out that the barbarian land was not really a place where nothing could grow. It was just that the person who could do this was not an ordinary person. The rock. Everyone raised their heads to look at it, and were deeply shocked by its small demonstration of strength. The light completely merged into the bare rocks, and a little bit of green grew on the rocks. Gradually, more and more people exclaimed. Because there were not only blades of grass growing, but also other plants growing. The vitality gathered in the barbarian land, and the momentum became greater and greater, making the barbarian land look completely new. Many people were so excited that they danced. Wild Dog was one of them. He jumped up and down and was overflowing with excitement. Everyone knew very well that they would live in the barbarian land for a long time. The barbarian land full of vitality was much better than the barbarian land full of death. Would this place become a paradise, or a home? Many people could not help but have this idea. Several leaders looked at Xiao Bai and Tang Zheng in awe. They had snatched food from the tiger's mouth. They had taken such an important rock from Hao Tianwang, which was enough to prove their strength. But when they thought of this, many people felt gloomy and worried. They asked nervously, "The rock is so important, and you have destroyed the imperial city and the city in the sky. What if Hao Tianwang leads troops to attack us? What should we do? We are still so weak. Can we resist?" Little White was full of confidence, and repeated the situation and interests that Tang Zheng had analyzed one by one. Several leaders fell into silence. In the end, they had to admit that Xiao Bai was right. However, they were skeptical about the so-called rebellion in the outer heavens. After all, they had not experienced nearly 100 years of history in the human world. It was hard to imagine how powerful the combined forces of the weak could be. Xiao Bai made a solemn vow, and they couldn't find a reason to refute it. They could only bitterly accept this reality. The appearance of the Kuan Peng cheered up everyone in the savage land. Their nervous minds became excited. The future was becoming brighter and brighter. For the next few days, Tang Zheng focused on teaching Xiao Bai about celestial chess. Once he left, the heavenly chess would be taken over by Xiao Bai. Unfortunately, they would not be able to absorb the vast and mighty power of the stars in the heavenly chess. In the past few days, Tang Zheng had absorbed quite a bit of star energy. The power of the stars in the heavens beyond heaven was actually denser than the power of the mortal world, which benefited him greatly. His power had increased tremendously. He had already been at the 7th grade of the Mahayana realm for some time, but he did not expect to break through too quickly. After all, the higher the cultivation, the harder it was to break through. Unless one had a great opportunity like Xiao Bai, they would not be able to make such a huge breakthrough in such a short period of time. Tang Zheng was calm, he was not in a hurry. In addition, his pure yang force was only temporarily under control, and was not truly dissolved. If he broke through his cultivation too quickly, the pure yang force would explosively increase. Whether or not the current balance would be maintained would be a problem. Xiao Bai's comprehension ability was extremely strong. Although it had only been a few days, he had already gradually comprehended many of the essence of the heavenly chess. Although he was unable to set up the heavenly chess by himself, it was more than enough to control the existing heavenly chess. Xiao Bai gradually understood the heavenly chess, and only then did he truly realize the extraordinariness and greatness of the heavenly chess, and could not help but have greater confidence in the future. Before leaving, Tang Zheng found Yi Yuan. He decided to leave the witch clan in the sky beyond heaven, as there were even more challenges and opportunities here. Although it was filled with danger, it was of great use to the growth of the witch clan. Speaking of which, the relationship between the witch clan and Xiao Bai was not shallow, so it was reasonable for them to stay by Xiao Bai's side. After listening to Tang Zheng's arrangements, although Yi Yuan wanted to stay by Tang Zheng's side and work for him, he was a righteous person and understood Tang Zheng's good intentions, so he naturally did not object. As a result, there were a lot of people who came this time, but there were very few people who returned. Only Yi Dingdang, the 3 girls, the Azura, and the 4 symbols followed Tang Zheng back to the human world. Before they left, the wilderness was filled with people. In just a few days, trees had already grown out of the wilderness. It was believed that before long, the wilderness would definitely turn into a lush forest. In addition, the Kuan Peng used its sacred art and obtained a few floating mountain peaks from somewhere. They floated above the wilderness, giving off a new atmosphere that was full of life. When everyone heard that Tang Zheng was going to leave, they all wanted to see how they would pass through the spatial gate. Many righteous path cultivators were expelled to the sky beyond heaven by the Great Array back then. Although they had personally experienced passing through the spatial gate, it was still in a hurry and they did not understand the profoundness of passing through the spatial gate. In addition, most of them were panicking, so how could they have the mood to observe? Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang stepped on the somersault cloud and slowly flew up into the sky, waving goodbye one after another. Pairs of eyes were focused on them. Xiao Bai couldn't help but shout, "Master, you must come back as soon as possible." Tang Zheng nodded slightly, his eyes filled with encouragement. Xiao Bai was well aware of Tang Zheng's intentions, and said firmly, "Master, don't worry, I will definitely protect everything. When you return in the future, our team will be even stronger." In the past few days, Xiao Bai had sent out many spies to take the initiative to investigate the situation in the sky beyond heaven. It seemed that as Tang Zheng had predicted, there was an undercurrent in the sky beyond heaven. It seemed that some people could not sit still and wanted to raise the flag of rebellion against Hao Tianwang. Their series of actions in the imperial city had spread to every corner of the sky beyond heaven, deeply shocking everyone. The spies took the opportunity to spread the news about the wilderness, letting everyone know that the former imperial family had returned and how powerful they were. What happened in the imperial city was the best evidence. Some people were already on their way to the wilderness, as if they wanted to seek refuge there. Everything was difficult at the beginning, but as long as the first shot was fired, the rest would follow naturally. Tian Chanz's long-cherished wish had been fulfilled. He spent all his time thinking about how to make Kingshuman stronger. After the decline of Kingshuman day by day, many of the martial arts in the sect were lost. Tian Chanzi focused on organizing the great martial arts of his sect from 1,000 years ago, and then imparted them to his fellow disciples without holding anything back. He looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression and said loudly, "Tang Zheng, go back and tell my disciple Shusha to practice hard. The next time she comes to the sky beyond heaven, I will specially hold a grand ceremony for her to return to the sect. Also, take care of yourself, especially your pure yang energy. Young man, you have a lot of energy. Let the women around you share some of it." Tang Zheng could not help but laugh. Yi Dingdang and the other two glared at Heaven Monk in shame and anger, and urged, "Don't listen to this old fellow's nonsense, let's hurry up and leave, otherwise, who knows what kind of absurd words he will say later." Whoosh. Chapter 1705. This was the first time Yi Dingdang, Wu, and Liu Qingmai had personally passed through the spatial door. Last time, they were in Sumeru World and did not have the opportunity to experience all of this. Today, it was very different. When they entered the spatial door, their eyes widened. However, the surroundings were dark and they could not see anything. They could not help but be disappointed. Before they could experience any extraordinary mysteries, their eyes suddenly opened up and they returned to the human world. Above the ninth heaven, a biting cold wind blew against their cheeks. Only then did they wake up. When they turned around, the spatial door had already closed. Yi Dingdang pouted and said faintly, "Why is it so fast? I didn't feel anything." Wu and Liu Qingmai nodded at the same time, their faces filled with regret. Tang Zheng laughed loudly, "Passing through space is just that. It is not as complicated and mysterious as you think." Liu Qingmai said, "That is for you. For us or others, this is an insurmountable gap. There will be a day when you can freely pass through the spatial door." Tang Zheng said with certainty. The place where they returned to the human world was actually not within their country. When they looked down, they actually passed through to another country. Whoosh! A fighter jet flew in front of them, startling them. Immediately after, Yi Dingdang excitedly jumped on the somersault cloud and said, "Wow, it's a fighter jet. Let's compete with it and see who is stronger." Tang Zheng helplessly rolled his eyes at her. She really wanted to see the world in chaos. Moreover, what was the point of this kind of adult bullying child game? Somersault cloud, get rid of this iron lump. With a command, the somersault cloud increased its speed. Like a ray of light, it flew away from the fighter jet and disappeared from the radar in the blink of an eye. The pilot watched this scene with a pale face. His jaw was about to drop. This little farce only added a bit of fun. Yi Ding-dang was not tired of it and excitedly said, "Next time I want to go to Sky Beyond Sky. Although it was boring when I passed through, there are many unknowns. It is too interesting." Tang Zheng acted as if he did not hear. Liu Qingmai, on the other hand, couldn't take her eyes off the scenery below. Looking down from the sky, there was a kind of beauty that ordinary people couldn't appreciate. "We seem to have arrived at An's country," Liu Qingmai suddenly said. Yi Ding-dang exclaimed in shock, "And, I haven't seen her for a long time. She actually returned to China alone." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 pairs of eyes looked at Tang Zheng at the same time. Tang Zheng was baffled. He rubbed his nose and said, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Marshall, who had been silent all this time, said, "And leaving, doesn't that mean that there's no hope for her to stay by your side?" Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What does that have to do with me? It would be strange if it had nothing to do with you," Yi Ding-dang said mercilessly. Liu Qingmai and Marshall nodded together. Tang Zheng might as well not say anything. No matter what, it was his fault. Yi Ding-dang rolled her eyes and said mischievously, "Why don't we go down and meet Anne? Speaking of which, I haven't been to her country yet." Liu Qingmai and Marshall hurriedly nodded in agreement. 3 against 1, Tang Zheng didn't have the chance to refute, and could only suppress the cloud. Many people on the ground saw a white cloud descend from the sky, and all of them opened their eyes wide in shock, looking at this miracle. After all, foreign countries were not like foreign countries. Most people did not know of the existence of cultivators, and were shocked by this scene. Especially when they saw 4 people jump down from the white cloud. Some of them even prostrated themselves on the ground, calling out to God and kowtowing. Yi Ding-dang covered her mouth and snickered, saying, "This group of foreigners treat us as immortals. How interesting. Let's go, don't scare them." Tang Zheng pulled the 3 of them, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared in front of everyone. Everything was like a dream. The few of them did not barge into the royal castle. Although they could quietly enter the castle, it would cause trouble for the royal family. Both sides were not enemies, so there was no need to do so. When they arrived at the castle, Anne was already waiting for them. She opened her eyes wide in surprise and stared straight at Tang Zheng, not concealing her feelings in the slightest. Anne was too happy. She was a princess, and who knew how many people wanted to get close to her? These people were all elites. However, goods would be lost if they were compared, and people would die if they were compared. These people compared to Tang Zheng, one was on the ground and the other was in the sky. There was simply no comparison. And had originally planned to forget about Tang Zheng, because she had no hope of having a place by Tang Zheng's side. She did not expect that after returning home, this kind of longing would not weaken, but instead become more and more intense. Especially under the pursuit of so many people, this kind of feeling was particularly strong. Even so, she resisted the idea of looking for Tang Zheng. After all, she was a princess and still had her own pride. She had tried her best, but in the end, it ended in failure. She really wanted to climb up and try again, but in front of Tang Zheng, she did not have the courage. All of this was because Tang Zheng was walking higher and higher, and the distance between them was getting farther and farther. She no longer dared to try again, and was pleasantly surprised as she went up to welcome them. When the 3 of them landed, the royal family had already known through special channels, and specially dressed up and came early to welcome them. She was a little nervous, not knowing if they would come to the castle. Now, it seemed that her wish had come true. They really did come. Yi Ding-dang pushed Tang Zheng and said, "Her Highness the Princess is here to welcome you. She's not welcoming me alone. We're all foils, you're the main character." Yi Ding-dang laughed mischievously. In the past, she had strictly prevented other women from getting close to Tang Zheng, but it seemed that ever since his robbery power erupted last time, she had become much more open-minded. Wu and Liu Qingmai also looked at him with burning eyes. Seeing and walking in front of him, Tang Zheng could not remain indifferent. After all, this was her castle. With so many pairs of eyes watching, if he did not give her face, it would be too unreasonable. Tang Zheng smiled faintly, and, long time no see, and could not hold it in and excitedly hugged Tang Zheng, saying excitedly, "It's great that you can come." Immediately, the other three girls looked at Tang Zheng with more and more thought-provoking gazes. Tang Zheng could not help but roll his eyes, and sensed the gazes of the other three girls and reluctantly left Tang Zheng's embrace. She then politely hugged the three of them and said, "Welcome to my home. Your home is so big." Yi Dingdang pointed to the magnificent castle and said, and was used to it and said, "It's just a little bigger." Everyone knew that this was a modest way of saying it. The royal castle had a lot of history and had witnessed the rise and fall of the royal family. It was like a silent old man. "My royal father and mother have prepared a sumptuous banquet to welcome your arrival," and led the few of them into the castle. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1706. At the end of the banquet, the host and guests enjoyed themselves to the fullest, and reluctantly left Tang Zheng and took the three girls to visit the castle. The king and Tang Zheng came to the highest point of the castle and looked at the night view of the city. There were not many tall buildings in this city. Instead, there were many short old buildings, which were completely different from the tall buildings in the country. The king observed the side of Tang Zheng's face. Speaking from the bottom of his heart, when they first met, he never would have thought that this young man would come to this step today. "Your Excellency, the other heads of the royal families of this continent are already on their way and will arrive tomorrow. I know that you like to keep a low profile, so this meeting will be kept secret," the king said. He was the king, but he called Tang Zheng Your Excellency, which was enough to show the status of Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was shocked. He was just passing by, but there was actually such a big commotion. "There is no need for this," the king said with a pleasant expression. "The news of your appearance has already spread throughout this continent through various secret channels, so they can't just sit and watch. During this period of time, everyone saw what happened to your country. That's why they couldn't wait to come here." Tang Zheng asked suspiciously, "What does this have to do with them?" The king smiled bitterly, thinking that you really don't know, or are you just pretending to be confused? But he explained earnestly, "Your Excellency and your subordinates are too powerful, enough to subvert them." So, the king didn't finish, but his meaning was self-evident. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that these royal families were worried that he would kill his way into their country and subvert their rule. No wonder they couldn't wait to come here. Were they here to test his strength? Or were they here to ask for peace? Wasn't this like the ancient times when all the countries came to court? The king's thoughts were far more complicated than Tang Zheng's, but he was also secretly glad that he had a good daughter who had formed a relationship with Tang Zheng early on. Although they didn't have a good relationship, their relationship was at least closer than the other royal families. This gave them an opportunity, so they weren't as anxious as the other royal families. Now, his status was rising, and he was in the limelight among the many royal families. Those who didn't get along with him usually had to be on good terms with him. The king enjoyed it too much. They're really worried for nothing. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a mocking smile. The king's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, "Don't tell me you don't have any plans for this continent." Thoughts? What was so good about this continent? Could it be compared to the heavenly realm? Of course not. Since that was the case, he might as well properly develop the heaven realm. That was his foundation, and he could control it. The king could not read Tang Zheng's mind and looked at him anxiously. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry to explain everything. He deliberately mystified and said, "This continent is actually not bad." The king's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Tang Zheng in horror, subconsciously thinking that he had some ideas about this continent. If someone else had said this, or if it had been said in the past, he would definitely have scoffed. This was simply condescending. However, the more he learned about the situation, the more he understood that Tang Zheng was not being arrogant. He really did have the ability to do so. The king said anxiously, "Then what are you going to do?" "That will depend on what they do tomorrow," Tang Zheng said mysteriously. The king's heart sank, but he kept comforting himself. According to the relationship between An and Tang Zheng, he probably wouldn't do anything to this country, right? Although he said this, the king still did not have any confidence. He waited until everyone else returned to their rooms to rest before calling and alone to the study, and was immersed in joy and did not notice her father's worry. She casually asked, "What's the matter? My dear daughter, do you know what Tang Zheng thinks about our country?" The king asked directly, and was confused and asked, "What does he think about our country?" "My silly daughter." The king lovingly stroked her head. His heart moved, and he simply changed the topic, saying, "Is it really impossible between you and him?" Anne's face flushed red as she stammered, "I don't know. You are my daughter. What are you being so shy about? This is not your style. If you like someone, then do your best to chase him. I don't believe that my woman can't chase him." The king encouraged, and guiltily said, "But he is too outstanding. The women around him are also outstanding. Daughter, you are also very outstanding," and raised her head and looked at the king with uncertainty and asked, "Do I really have a chance?" "Of course you have a chance," and seemed to have gathered her fighting spirit again. The king remembered something that was occasionally mentioned at the dinner table and warned, "Don't forget about your master, Tian Chanzi." From what they said, Tian Chanzi went to another world. Although I don't really understand the meaning of this sentence, you have a reason to go back. You haven't finished your studies yet, so how can you leave your master? This way you can continue to stay by his side and avoid any awkwardness. Anne's heart moved and she was eager to give it a try. "I will make it clear to Tang Zheng. You don't need to appear. I guarantee that he won't be able to find a reason to decline," the king said confidently, and didn't refuse. The corners of her mouth hooked up into a smile. In the darkness of the night, it was captivating. The next day, the sun was high in the sky. Several luxurious planes landed at the airport. Then, one by one, the luxurious motorcade drove into the royal castle. Although the king said that he would keep a low profile, how could the royal family stay low profile when traveling? The news of the royal family gathering seemed to have grown wings and flew into the ears of many people. Combined with the news of Tang Zheng descending from the sky yesterday, how could the various powers not understand that they were here for Tang Zheng? Immediately, everyone was filled with curiosity about this meeting. They didn't know what kind of sparks would be created or what kind of conclusion would be made. Would the situation of the world change because of this? In the castle, Tang Zheng sat firmly in his chair. The reception was handled by the king. In any case, he wasn't familiar with these royal family members. This time, most of the people who came had prominent statuses. With a single order, some corner of the world would tremble. Some of the guests were the king himself, while some were core members of the royal family. Without exception, no one dared to look down on them. Tang Zheng sat firmly on the fishing platform. He looked at the endless stream of people with an expressionless face. And sat beside him. She leaned over and said intimately, "Don't look at them on the surface. In fact, they are very guilty." Tang Zheng's mouth twitched. He squeezed out a wry smile. And didn't hold back at all. She hit the nail on the head. The other royal family members looked at the intimate appearance of Tang Zheng and Anne and couldn't help but cast envious gazes. They weren't envious of Tang Zheng's good luck with women. Instead, they were envious of and for being so close to Tang Zheng. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first, making countless people envious. To read a novel, please visit. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.